Some stories from the past refuse to stay buried. Events so strange, so unsettling, that historians scratched their heads and entire chapters of history were rewritten. Mysterious disappearances, cryptic artifacts, and unexplained phenomena linger in the shadows of time, daring us to question what we think we know. Who, or what, vanished without a trace? What secrets lie hidden in ruins that have outlasted empires? Tonight, we step into the unknown, exploring the eerie mysteries that shook the world and defied explanation. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the chilling truths history tried to hide. Nestled amidst the rugged hills of southern Afghanistan, near the fertile plains that cradle the Helmand River, lies the ancient site of Mundigak. From a distance, the ruins appear as nothing more than weathered mounds of mud and stone, their shapes softened by millennia of wind and dust. Yet, step closer, and a more complex story emerges. The remains of fortified terraces, the faint outlines of residential compounds, and the silent skeleton of a city that once thrived more than 4,000 years ago. Mundigak is a whisper from a forgotten past, a place where human ambition and mystery intertwine. Archaeologists first began excavations here in the mid-20th century, revealing evidence of one of the earliest urban centers in the region. Layers upon layers of habitation stretch back to as early as 3000 BC, with signs of intricate craftsmanship, trade, and social organization. Pottery fragments, decorated with geometric patterns, lie alongside the foundations of mud brick buildings, hinting at a sophisticated culture that valued both function and artistry. Some structures suggest the presence of temples or communal spaces, yet their exact purpose remains elusive. Who gathered here and why? And what drove them to construct these monumental terraces in such a seemingly remote landscape? The site's strategic location offers some clues. Overlooking the river valley, Mundigak likely controlled vital trade routes that connected the Iranian plateau to the Indus Valley. Artifacts from distant lands, beads, ornaments, and pottery point to interactions with cultures far beyond the immediate region. Yet, despite evidence of prosperity, the city's sudden decline around 1800 BC raises questions that remain unanswered. Was it environmental change, resource depletion, or human conflict that led to its abandonment? Or could it have been something altogether different, hidden in the layers of time? Among the most compelling features of Mundigak are its fortifications. Massive mud brick walls enclose sections of the settlement, some rising nearly 10 meters high in their original form. Their design suggests not only a need for defense, but also a sophisticated understanding of architecture and urban planning. Within these walls, streets and alleys intersect at irregular angles, hinting at a city that evolved organically, responding to both terrain and the needs of its inhabitants. Scholars have debated whether these fortifications indicate persistent threats from rival groups, or were primarily symbolic, a demonstration of power and civic pride. Artifacts from Mundigak offer tantalizing glimpses into daily life. Jewelry made of lapis lazuli, a stone mined hundreds of miles away, indicates long-distance trade. Stylized figurines of humans and animals suggest religious or ritualistic practices, though their meaning is largely speculative. Some researchers have proposed connections between Mundigak and other contemporary civilizations, including the Indus Valley and early Mesopotamia, based on similarities in pottery and architectural motifs. Yet the precise nature of these links remains obscure, leaving room for questions rather than answers. Even the city's layout carries a quiet intrigue. The division between residential zones, public spaces, and possible ceremonial areas suggests a degree of social stratification and organization, but little is known about governance or leadership. Were these decisions guided by kings, councils, or communal consensus? Mundigak may have been an early experiment in urban civilization, but much of its story has faded, leaving only fragments for us to piece together. As one wanders the desolate terraces today, the sense of mystery deepens. Wind scours the ancient walls, erasing footprints almost as quickly as they are made, while the sun casts long shadows across the ruins. It is easy to imagine the lives that once pulsed through these streets, the conversations, the trade, the ceremonies, now silent echoes in a place that continues to resist full understanding. Mundigak is at once familiar and alien, a monument to human endeavor that refuses to reveal all its secrets. What drove its rise? What forced its fall? And what else, buried beneath the layers of earth, still waits for discovery? As we leave the windswept terraces of Mundigak behind, our journey carries us further east, over rugged landscapes and dense forests, to a place where human ambition clings to the edge of the earth itself. Rising sharply above the plains of northern Cambodia, perched atop a 525-meter cliff in the Dongrek Mountains, stands the Preah Vihear complex. From a distance, it appears almost to float above the horizon, a series of stone terraces and temples that seem impossibly suspended between earth and sky. Sunlight catches the carvings on its weathered sandstone walls, revealing delicate bas-reliefs that have survived over a millennium, while deep shadows hint at hidden chambers and pathways yet to be fully explored. The sheer drama of the setting is undeniable, and it immediately evokes a sense of awe, of human endeavor striving to touch the divine. The Preah Vihear complex is thought to have been constructed primarily during the 9th to 12th centuries A.D., a period when the Khmer Empire extended its reach across much of Southeast Asia. Yet the origins of the site are enigmatic. While scholars generally agree that the main temples were built under the reign of King Suryavarman I and later expanded by Suryavarman II, the same king credited with Angkor Wat, the full purpose of Preah Vihear remains a subject of debate. Unlike other Khmer temples, which were typically designed as compact, centralized structures, Preah Vihear stretches across more than 800 meters along the escarpment, with a linear progression that gradually ascends the cliffs. Why was such an unusual design chosen? Was it purely practical, an adaptation to the steep terrain, or did it hold deeper spiritual significance, guiding worshippers along a symbolic path toward enlightenment? The architectural details of Preah Vihear further intensify its mystery. Intricate lintels and pediments depict scenes from Hindu epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, yet the arrangement of the structures suggests something more complex than mere storytelling. Some researchers have noted alignments between temple corridors and celestial bodies, hinting at a possible astronomical function. Could Preah Vihear have served as a kind of observatory, a sacred calendar, or even a ritualistic map connecting heaven and earth? Others point to the enigmatic lack of large residential areas nearby, which raises questions about who exactly inhabited or frequented the site. Was it a pilgrimage destination visited seasonally, or did a permanent, highly specialized priestly class occupy these terraces for centuries? Even the surrounding landscape adds layers of intrigue. From the cliff edges, one can gaze over the plains that now form the border with Thailand, imagining the region as it existed 1,000 years ago, a densely forested frontier, dotted with villages and farmlands, yet largely controlled by powerful elites. The precarious positioning of the temple, seemingly isolated and vulnerable, seems almost counterintuitive. Was it deliberately placed for defensive purposes, to monitor trade routes or distant rivals? Or was its lofty location meant solely to evoke spiritual transcendence, to lift the mind as much as the body? Some scholars have speculated that hidden chambers or passageways could exist, carved into the mountain itself, though none have been definitively verified. Artifacts discovered at Preah Vihear add another layer of fascination. Stone inscriptions, now weathered and partially eroded, describe royal endowments, rituals, and the dedication of the temples to deities such as Shiva. Yet these texts leave many questions unanswered. For instance, references to nearby holy sites or obscure local rituals hint at cultural practices that have vanished, leaving only whispers behind. Could there be ceremonial purposes we will never fully reconstruct, lost to the passage of time? Decorative motifs, serpentine nagas, celestial dancers, and mythical animals also invite interpretation. Were these merely symbolic, or did they serve protective or mystical functions for those ascending the terraces? Beyond historical records, Preah Vihear has inspired speculation and legends that persist into the present. Locals speak of hidden chambers containing treasures, secret passages carved into the cliff, and echoes of ceremonies long silenced. Some researchers have even suggested connections with other regional sites, proposing that Preah Vihear was part of a network of temples aligned with sacred geography, designed to channel spiritual energy across the landscape. While such theories remain speculative, they underscore the sense of intentionality and mystery that permeates the complex. The physical experience of moving through Preah Vihear further deepens the enigmatic atmosphere. Stone stairways wind sharply upward, guiding visitors along terraces that offer breathtaking views over the surrounding forests and plateaus. The air is thin and cool, carrying a quiet that feels almost sacred, interrupted only by the occasional call of birds or the distant rustle of leaves. Here, time seems suspended. One can imagine monks or royal envoys ascending these steps centuries ago, their movements echoing through corridors carved from living rock, following rituals whose meanings we can only partially reconstruct. How did such precise craftsmanship emerge in such a remote location, and what stories remain locked in the stones themselves? Even the political history of Preah Vihear contributes to its aura of uncertainty. Over centuries, the temple has been a focal point of border disputes, shifting control, and contested heritage, adding layers of human complexity atop the already profound mysteries of its creation. Yet despite centuries of human conflict, the site endures, a testament to both its architectural genius and the enduring fascination it inspires. Standing at the edge of the complex today, one cannot help but wonder, how much of Preah Vihear's story remains hidden, waiting for discovery? How many paths were lost to time? How many rituals never recorded? And how many messages remain encoded in stone? The temple offers answers in part, yet it insists that much of its wisdom is reserved for those willing to look closely, question carefully, and linger patiently in its shadows. In the silence of the cliffs and the sweep of the terraces, the mystery speaks for itself, inviting us to consider not only the grandeur of human achievement, but also the enduring enigmas that history cannot fully explain. Leaving behind the cliff-top silence of Preah Vihear, where stone and sky seem to merge into something almost unreal, our journey now turns westward once more, toward the jagged spine of the Caucasus. Here in southern Georgia, the landscape shifts dramatically. Green valleys fracture into steep ravines, and the river Kura carves its way through volcanic rock, as if nature itself had been split open. And rising from one of these fractured cliffs is something that does not immediately resemble a city at all. From a distance, it looks like a scar in the mountain, an impossible hollowed-out wall of stone. But as you draw closer, the shape resolves into something far more deliberate. Rooms, corridors, stairways, hidden windows cut into the cliff face. This is Vardzia, the vast cave monastery complex carved directly into the rock of Eredo Mountain in southern Georgia. At first glance, it feels less like a construction and more like an absence, space removed from the mountain rather than added to it. And yet, this absence once held life. Historical accounts place the primary development of Vardzia in the 12th century AD, during the reign of Queen Tamar, one of the most influential rulers of medieval Georgia. Under her rule, the site expanded into a fortified monastic city, carved across multiple levels of volcanic tuff. It is believed that as many as 6,000 rooms once existed here: chapels, living quarters, wine cellars, refectories, and libraries, all connected through a labyrinth of tunnels that disappear into the rock. But why build an entire city inside a mountain? Official explanations point to defense. The 12th century was a time of regional instability, with repeated invasions threatening the Georgian kingdom. A hidden city carved into stone would have offered protection from armies moving across the valley below. From a distance, Vardzia would be nearly invisible, its entrances concealed behind the natural contours of the cliff. Even if discovered, its narrow passages would have turned it into a fortress that could not easily be breached. Yet, as one studies its design more closely, the simplicity of defense begins to feel insufficient as an explanation. Vardzia is not only functional, it is deeply symbolic. At its center lies the Church of the Dormition, still adorned with faded but haunting frescoes. Among them is a depiction of Queen Tamar herself, standing not as a distant monarch, but as a sacred figure integrated into the spiritual architecture of the space. Her image, preserved in pigment on stone, suggests that Vardzia was more than refuge. It was ideology carved into rock. The layout of the complex rises in layers along the cliff, almost like a vertical ascent toward something unseen. Lower levels contain storage and daily living spaces, while higher chambers lead toward sacred areas. Some scholars interpret this arrangement as purely practical: temperature regulation, water access, defensive positioning. But others have wondered whether the vertical progression also carried symbolic meaning, a physical journey upward mirroring a spiritual ascent inward. And then there are the engineering details that continue to draw quiet fascination. Water channels were carved into the stone to deliver irrigation across multiple levels of the complex. A sophisticated system of tunnels allowed movement between sections without exposure to the outside world. Hidden escape routes were cut deep into the mountain, some reportedly stretching far beyond the main structure. Even today, parts of the system remain inaccessible or only partially mapped. How much of Vardzia is still unseen within the rock? One of the most enduring questions surrounding the site is not just how it was built, but how it was completed with such precision in an era without modern surveying tools. The alignment of corridors, the consistency of chamber heights, and the integration of natural rock formations suggest planning at a scale that feels almost architectural in the modern sense. Was this the work of a single coordinated vision, or did the mountain itself guide the design, with builders adapting continuously to its hidden structure? Local traditions add another layer of interpretation. Some stories speak of secret chambers that were sealed after invasions, their contents never recovered. Others suggest that sections of Vardzia were used for ritual practices that were intentionally concealed, their meanings lost even before the site fell into decline. While archaeology has not confirmed these claims, the sheer scale of unexplored cavities within the rock leaves room for uncertainty. And then there is the question of disappearance. Vardzia did not vanish suddenly, but it did decline. A devastating earthquake in 1283 is believed to have destroyed a significant portion of the complex, exposing hidden rooms and collapsing entire sections of the cliff face. After this event, the once thriving monastic city began to lose its population. Later invasions and shifting political borders further reduced its role, until much of it was abandoned. But abandonment does not erase presence. It only freezes it in time. Even today, standing within the remaining chambers, one can still see traces of life. Soot marks near ancient hearths, faint outlines of frescoes that once glowed with color, carved niches where manuscripts or relics may have been stored. The silence is not empty. It feels occupied by memory. And yet, despite centuries of study, many questions remain suspended within the stone. Were all parts of Vardzia ever fully mapped, or do sections still lie hidden behind collapsed passages? Did every chamber serve a known function, Or were some spaces intentionally left without explanation, used for purposes that history never recorded? Perhaps most intriguingly, why does the site feel less like a ruin and more like something paused, as if its story did not end, but simply stopped being told? As the wind moves through the carved corridors today, echoing softly through chambers once filled with prayer and movement, Vardzia seems to resist closure. It does not fully reveal itself, nor does it completely retreat into obscurity. Instead, it lingers in between, known but not fully understood. And so the question remains, hanging in the stillness of the carved stone: how much of Vardzia is history, and how much is still waiting, hidden just beyond the reach of light? From the cliffside silence and hidden chambers of Vardzia, our journey now turns south, across deserts, forests, and rivers, to the lush, rolling landscapes of southwestern Nigeria. Here, in the Yoruba region, near the town of Sagamu, lies one of the most astonishing and enigmatic structures of pre-colonial Africa, Sungbo's Eredo. Unlike the cliff-carved monastic city of Vardzia, this is a monument that unfolds across the earth itself, a vast, continuous system of walls and ditches, carved and built from the land, stretching over 160 kilometers in total length. From above, it resembles an enormous spiral etched into the green terrain, a scar and a statement all at once. At first glance, the Eredo appears almost natural, as if the landscape itself has grown into extraordinary forms. But closer inspection reveals careful design: deep moats, parallel earthen walls, and strategic openings, all forming an interconnected network whose sheer scale defies immediate comprehension. Scholars have described it as one of the largest man-made structures in Africa, a testament to the organizational ability, labor, and vision of a society that thrived long before European contact reshaped the continent. Dating of the Eredo places its construction around the 10th century AD, though the exact timeline remains uncertain. Oral traditions link it to the legendary queen or chieftainess Oloye Bilikisu Sungbo, a figure whose existence blends history and myth. Some accounts describe her as a wealthy and powerful leader, revered for her wisdom, courage, and devotion to the people. Others hint at connections to broader networks of trade and governance that extended across West Africa. Who she was, and why she commanded such a monumental construction, remains a question that historians continue to explore. The scale of Sungbo's Eredo is staggering. Walls rise up to 20 meters in height, flanked by ditches up to 30 meters wide in places. Moving through it on foot, one feels both dwarfed and awed, as if walking inside a landscape shaped by ambition as much as by necessity. Archaeologists have proposed that it served multiple functions: defensive fortifications against invading forces, territorial markers asserting control, and perhaps even sacred boundaries imbued with spiritual significance. Yet none of these explanations fully accounts for the immense labor required or the careful attention to alignment and continuity over such a vast distance. The construction methods themselves invite reflection. The walls and ditches were carved from clay-rich soil, compacted and sculpted with remarkable precision. Paths and openings suggest planned access points, not random erosion. How did a society without modern engineering tools achieve such uniformity and scale? And what motivated such an enormous commitment of human effort? Was the Eredo purely practical, a response to external threats, or did it serve a symbolic purpose, connecting communities, sacred sites, or ancestors across the land? Legends surrounding Sungbo's Eredo add a layer of intrigue. Local tradition speaks of hidden treasures buried within the walls, of secret chambers holding sacred objects, and of rituals performed along the course of the earthworks. Some stories even claim that the walls were designed to channel spiritual energy, connecting the living with the divine. While archaeology has not verified these claims, The persistence of oral memory hints at an understanding of the Eredo that went beyond mere functionality. Could parts of its purpose be encoded in ways that survive only in song, story, and ceremonial practice? The Eredo also invites comparison with other ancient monumental projects around the world, like the linear terraces of Preah Vihear or the cliffside labyrinths of Vardzia. It represents the translation of human vision into the landscape on a massive scale. Yet unlike stone or brick constructions, the earthen walls of Sungbo's Eredo are vulnerable to time, weather, and erosion. That it endures at all, largely intact, underscores both the sophistication of its builders and the mystery of their society's intentions. Strategically, Sungbo's Eredo seems to interact with its environment in subtle ways. Water channels intersect some ditches, creating controlled irrigation or defensive flooding. Openings in the walls align with hilltops or valleys, suggesting careful consideration of both topography and line of sight. It is a structure designed to integrate with its surroundings, not dominate them, yet the vision required to conceive such integration remains difficult to fathom. And then there is the human element. What of the communities that maintained, inhabited, or worshipped within the Eredo? Evidence of settlements and ritual activity suggests that it was more than a wall. It was a living system, a network connecting people across distance and time. How did social organization function here? What rituals or governance mechanisms ensured such cohesion? And why, eventually, did the site fall out of active use, leaving behind the silent earthworks we see today? Even today, walking along the remains of the Eredo is a contemplative experience. Birds dart along the moats, wind stirs the grass that has claimed the earthworks, and the land hums with a quiet sense of continuity. The human stories embedded in the soil remain largely unspoken, yet their presence is palpable. Like Vardzia and Preah Vihear before it, Sungbo's Eredo embodies a dialogue between human ambition and the natural world, a story carved into the earth that demands reflection and curiosity. And so, the question remains open. How much of Sungbo's Eredo's original purpose do we truly understand? Were its builders motivated by security, spirituality, symbolism, or a combination of all three? And how many stories, hidden within the earth or carried in memory, still wait to be rediscovered? The Eredo does not answer, but it invites us to pause, to imagine, and to wonder, reminding us that history is not always fully written, and some mysteries continue to resist the passage of time. From the vast, sculpted earthworks of Sungbo's Eredo, where human vision stretched across landscapes in ways that continue to inspire awe, our journey now carries us northward to the rugged terrain along the banks of the Euphrates River. Here, in modern-day Turkey's Erzincan province, stands Altıntepe, a fortress perched on a small hill overlooking the surrounding plains with quiet, enduring vigilance. From a distance, Altıntepe seems modest, almost unassuming, its earthen walls rising gently from the plateau. Yet closer inspection reveals a structure of extraordinary complexity. Remnants of fortified walls, circular towers, and traces of carefully laid stonework that speak to both military ingenuity and civic ambition. Altıntepe dates back to approximately the 9th century BC, during a period when the Urartian kingdom dominated much of eastern Anatolia. Archaeologists have identified the site as a fortress, part of a network of settlements that allowed the Urartians to monitor and control trade routes, agricultural production, and regional defenses. Yet even within this relatively clear historical framework, Altıntepe harbors mysteries that invite reflection. Why was this particular hill chosen for settlement, and what does the layout of the fortress reveal about the people who inhabited it? Were its towers purely for observation and defense, or did they serve ceremonial or symbolic purposes, marking the presence of power and authority over the landscape? Excavations at Altıntepe have uncovered a rich array of artifacts: bronze weapons, pottery, stone altars, and inscriptions that attest to the sophistication of Urartian society. In particular, evidence of metallurgical activity, workshops for smelting and shaping bronze, suggests that the fortress was not only a defensive outpost, but also a hub of economic and technological activity. This dual purpose, both martial and productive, hints at a community that balanced survival with innovation, security with creativity. Yet there are questions that conventional archaeology struggles to answer. Within the central citadel lie unusual structural arrangements, rooms with small, narrow entrances, chambers whose intended use is unclear, and walls that curve in ways that defy straightforward defensive logic. Some scholars propose that these features may have been symbolic, reflecting cosmological beliefs, or designed for rituals whose meanings have since been lost. Could the fortress itself have been conceived as a space that mediated between the earthly and the sacred, a place where daily life, defense, and spiritual practice intersected? Altıntepe's position along the Euphrates adds another layer of intrigue. The river was a lifeline, facilitating trade and communication across Anatolia and beyond. Yet it was also a route for invaders and nomadic groups, which may explain the fortress's formidable defenses. How often did the inhabitants face external threats, and how did the interplay of geography and strategy shape the lives of those who lived here? The fortress's design seems to reflect a deep understanding of the landscape, using natural slopes and terraces to enhance fortification, but also integrating open spaces that suggest communal or ceremonial gatherings. Inscriptions found on site provide tantalizing but incomplete insights. Many describe the construction of the fortress, offerings to deities, and dedications by local rulers, yet they leave much unsaid. What daily routines occupied the people who called Altıntepe home? How did they interact with neighboring settlements, and what unseen networks of power connected this hilltop fortress to the wider Urartian world? These questions linger in the absence of complete records, leaving us to piece together a narrative from the fragments that remain. The fortress also contains burial mounds and tombs, adding another dimension to its mystery. Some tombs reveal elaborate funerary practices, with grave goods and evidence of ritual activity, hinting at social hierarchies and beliefs about life, death, and the afterlife. Yet many of the burial sites remain unexplored or partially studied. What might they reveal about the cultural, spiritual, or political life of Altıntepe's inhabitants? And are their tombs still hidden, their secrets sealed by centuries of earth and stone? Beyond the walls, the surrounding landscape contributes to the enigmatic character of the site. Rolling plains, river valleys, and distant mountains create a natural panorama, but also a subtle network of observation points, routes, and possible hidden settlements. Could there be undiscovered outposts or shrines connected to Altıntepe, now obscured by time and terrain? The fortress, while impressive on its own, may represent just one node in a broader tapestry of human activity, one whose full extent has yet to be understood. Even standing within the remains of the citadel today, the atmosphere is quietly powerful. The wind carries whispers across empty terraces and collapsed walls. Shadows play across stone surfaces, hinting at spaces once alive with movement and ritual. The scale of human effort, the careful thought behind architectural choices, and the enduring presence of the site all provoke reflection. What drove these people to build here, to carve such permanence into a hilltop, and why did their story eventually fade from memory? Altıntepe does not reveal its mysteries easily. The fortress is neither silent nor empty, but it speaks in fragments, through walls, inscriptions, and the very layout of the space. It invites contemplation, demanding attention to the interplay between human intention and the shaping force of geography, between daily life and ceremonial practice. And so we are left with an open question, echoing across the centuries. How much of Altıntepe's story has survived only in stone, and how much still lies hidden beneath layers of earth and time, waiting for discovery? From the fortified heights of Altıntepe, where ancient Urartian walls still watch over the Anatolian plains, our journey now turns south once more. The terrain shifts dramatically as we move across the vast stretches of southern Africa, where river systems cut through dry savanna and sandstone ridges rise like silent witnesses to forgotten ages. Here, near the confluence of the Limpopo and Shahr-e rivers, lies a hill that changes everything we thought we understood about early African civilizations. Mapungubwe Hill rises modestly from the landscape, unassuming at first glance, almost gentle in its silhouette. But its presence is deceptive. This is not just a hill. It is the heart of one of southern Africa's earliest known complex societies, a place where power, trade, and symbolism converged nearly 1,000 years ago. And yet, even today, it resists simple interpretation. Archaeological evidence places the rise of the Mapungubwe kingdom around the 11th century AD, reaching its height between the 12th and 13th centuries. Unlike the scattered settlements of earlier communities in the region, Mapungubwe represents a marked shift, a structured society with clear social stratification, centralized leadership, and long-distance trade connections stretching far beyond the African interior. At the base of the hill, remnants of dwellings and enclosures spread across the landscape. These were once the homes of ordinary inhabitants, farmers, artisans, herders, who lived within a carefully organized settlement system. Higher up, on the hill itself, evidence points to something entirely different, a restricted, elevated zone reserved for elites. The separation is not subtle. It is deliberate. Physical elevation appears to mirror social hierarchy in a way that is both architectural and symbolic. But why this hill? Why here, in this specific place where rivers converge and landscapes open into vast trade corridors? Mainstream interpretations suggest geography played a crucial role. Mapungubwe sat at a strategic crossroads linking the interior of southern Africa with coastal trade networks that reached the Indian Ocean. Gold, ivory, and other valuable resources flowed outward, while beads, ceramics, and foreign goods flowed inward. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of trade items originating as far away as Persia and China, suggesting that Mapungubwe was part of a global network far more extensive than once imagined. And yet, the organization of the hilltop settlement raises deeper questions. At the summit of Mapungubwe Hill, excavations have revealed what appears to be a royal enclosure, stone walls forming confined spaces that overlook the surrounding plains. Within this restricted area, archaeologists discovered one of the most significant finds in African archaeology. The burial site commonly referred to as the Golden Rhinoceros, along with other elite graves containing gold artifacts, beads, and ceremonial objects. The presence of gold here is especially striking, not merely as wealth, but as symbolism. Gold was not used for everyday exchange in Mapungubwe society. It appears instead in ritual and funerary contexts, suggesting that material wealth and spiritual authority were deeply intertwined. But what exactly did gold represent to those who lived here? Was it a marker of divine kingship, a material connection to ancestral power, or something even more complex that we can no longer fully decode? Some researchers argue that Mapungubwe represents one of the earliest examples of state formation in southern Africa, where leadership was increasingly centralized and separated from ordinary life. The hilltop elite zone may have functioned as a sacred political space, where rulers were both governing figures and spiritual intermediaries. From this perspective, elevation was not just practical, it was ideological. Power quite literally rose above the rest of society. But alternative interpretations continue to circulate in academic and cultural discussions. Certain scholars and oral traditions suggest that Mapungubwe's organization may reflect a cosmological model, where the physical landscape was mapped onto spiritual beliefs about the structure of the universe. The hill could have represented a sacred axis, a point of connection between earthly existence and ancestral or divine realms. In this reading, the separation between hilltop and lowland was not merely social hierarchy, it was a reflection of cosmic order. Others point to the sudden decline of Mapungubwe around the 14th century AD. The reasons remain debated. Climatic shifts, particularly changes in rainfall patterns and resource availability, are often cited as contributing factors. Trade routes also began shifting toward other emerging centers, such as Great Zimbabwe further south. But no single explanation fully accounts for the abandonment of the hilltop capital. Why would a society that had achieved such complexity and regional influence gradually fade from its seat of power? And what became of the knowledge embedded in its organization, its political systems, its rituals, its understanding of land and authority? Perhaps most intriguing is the way Mapungubwe challenges assumptions about technological and cultural development. The sophistication of its social hierarchy, its trade connections, and its symbolic use of gold complicate earlier narratives that underestimated the complexity of early African states. And yet, despite growing archaeological understanding, much of its internal worldview remains inaccessible to us. The hill itself adds to this sense of partial visibility. Even today, walking its slopes reveals fragmented stone structures, eroded pathways, and subtle shifts in terrain that hint at former activity. Wind moves across the summit where elite figures once stood, looking out over a kingdom that no longer exists in the same form. The silence is not empty. It feels layered, as if multiple interpretations of the same place continue to coexist without resolution. Was Mapungubwe primarily a political capital, or did it function first as a sacred landscape? Did its rulers see themselves as kings in the modern sense, or as custodians of something more spiritually defined? And how much of its structure was meant to be seen, and how much was designed to be understood only by those initiated into its meanings? Even the most detailed archaeological reconstructions leave gaps. Entire aspects of daily life remain uncertain. The voices of Mapungubwe exist now only in fragments: pottery shards, burial goods, and the contours of stone walls shaped by hands long gone. And so the hill remains, not as a solved chapter of history, but as an open question written into the earth itself, waiting for interpretation, resisting final certainty. As the sun sets over the Limpopo Valley and shadows stretch across the ancient summit, one question continues to linger in the stillness. How much of Mapungubwe's true meaning has been recovered, and how much still lies hidden beneath the silence of the hill? From the elevated silence of Mapungubwe Hill, where power once rose above the savanna in stone and gold, our journey now drifts westward across the vast interior of Africa. The landscape gradually shifts again. Dry woodland gives way to rolling plateaus, and the air grows heavier with heat and dust carried on harmattan winds. Here, in the southwestern reaches of Burkina Faso, near the town of Loropéni, the land begins to reveal something unexpected. At first, the Loropéni Ruins appear almost like a natural extension of the terrain. Massive stone walls emerge from the earth, their surfaces softened by centuries of weather, their shapes blending into the surrounding bush. But as the eye adjusts, the illusion fades. These are not natural formations. They are deliberate. Carefully arranged blocks of laterite stone form enclosures of striking scale and precision, enclosing an area that feels both defined and open, structured yet silent. This is Loropéni, West Africa's only UNESCO World Heritage listed stone ruin of its kind. And yet, despite its recognition, it remains one of the least understood archaeological sites in the region. Archaeological studies generally date the construction of the Loropéni fortifications between the 11th and 17th centuries AD. This was a long span of time, marked by shifting regional powers, evolving trade networks, and the rise and decline of various Sahelian states. The ruins are most commonly associated with trans-Saharan trade routes, particularly those linked to gold commerce moving between the forested regions of West Africa and the northern desert economies. But beyond this broad framework, certainty begins to thin. The walls themselves are remarkable. Built from carefully stacked laterite blocks without visible mortar, they rise in some places several meters high and enclose a complex of courtyards and passages. Their construction suggests not only technical skill but sustained labor over generations. These were not temporary defenses. They were intended to endure. Yet, what exactly were they defending? Some researchers interpret Loropéni as a fortified settlement, possibly occupied by groups involved in controlling or protecting trade routes. Gold, ivory, and salt would have passed through this region, carried by caravans stretching across vast distances. In this view, the ruins functioned as a protective hub, a checkpoint in a larger economic network that connected West Africa to North Africa and beyond. But this explanation, while plausible, does not fully resolve the questions the site raises. There are no clear inscriptions, no definitive written records tied directly to its builders, no singular cultural attribution that can explain its origin without debate. Instead, Loropéni exists at the intersection of multiple historical currents, each offering partial insight but no complete picture. And so, the ruins remain open to interpretation. Some oral traditions in the region speak of ancient communities who built stone enclosures not only for protection, but also for spiritual purposes. In these accounts, walls were not merely defensive structures, but symbolic boundaries, separating the ordinary from the sacred, the visible from the unseen. Could Loropéni have held such a dual function? A place where trade and ritual overlapped, where economic control and spiritual authority were intertwined in ways now difficult to reconstruct? The layout of the site adds further intrigue. Multiple enclosures suggest zones of differing use, perhaps reflecting social organization or hierarchical access. Certain areas appear more secluded, their entrances narrower, their internal spaces less exposed to the outside. Were these reserved for leadership, storage, ritual activity, or something else entirely? Without written explanation, each interpretation remains speculative. Even the surrounding landscape contributes to the mystery. Loropéni is not isolated in the absolute sense. It sits within a broader region shaped by centuries of movement and exchange. Yet there are no major urban centers immediately adjacent, no obvious large-scale settlement that explains its presence as a standalone fortress. Why here, in this specific location, rather than closer to a known political capital or dense population center? Was its position chosen for strategic visibility along trade routes, or does it reflect something more localized? Control over a specific resource, water source, or territorial boundary that is no longer obvious in the modern landscape? And then there is the question of abandonment. Unlike sites that show clear signs of sudden destruction, Loropéni does not tell a dramatic story of collapse. Instead, it suggests gradual disuse. Stones remain in place, walls endure, but human presence fades. At some point, activity ceased. The reasons are not recorded in any surviving form. Climate shifts, economic changes, political realignments, all are possible contributors, but none can be confirmed as the definitive cause. What remains is silence shaped into architecture. Walking through the ruins today, one encounters a space that feels neither fully alive nor entirely dead. The stone walls stand as outlines of something once functional, yet their purpose feels partially obscured, as if the site has retained its structure but lost its instruction. Wind moves through openings that once controlled movement of people and goods. Shadows fall into courtyards that may once have held markets, guards, or ceremonies now forgotten. And in that silence, questions begin to accumulate. Who built Loropéni, and under what authority? Was it the work of a centralized state, a coalition of communities, or a network of traders operating across borders that no longer exist in the same form? Did its builders see it as permanent, or simply as one stage in a longer cycle of movement and exchange? Some researchers have even suggested that sites like Loropéni may represent a broader, still underdocumented tradition of stone architecture in West Africa, one that did not always conform to the monumental urban forms seen elsewhere, but instead expressed itself through fortified networks, seasonal occupation, and adaptive construction. If true, this would suggest a historical landscape far more complex than previously assumed. Yet much of this remains unresolved. Loropéni does not yield answers easily. It offers fragments, stone, space, alignment, silence, and asks the observer to assemble meaning from what survives. And perhaps that is part of its enduring power, the refusal to be fully categorized, fully explained, or fully contained within a single historical narrative. As the sun lowers over the Burkinabe landscape and the ruins take on deeper shadows, one question continues to linger in the stillness of the stone enclosures. How many stories once lived within Loropéni's walls? And how many of them are still waiting, unspoken, beneath the dust of time? From the dry, sun-baked ruins of Loropéni, where ancient stone walls hold the echoes of trade, ritual, and human determination, our journey turns eastward across the vast Asian subcontinent. The terrain softens into fertile plains, intersected by rivers that have sustained civilizations for millennia. Here, in the modern state of Haryana, India, near the Ghaggar Hakra riverbed, lies Banawali, a site that speaks to one of the earliest urban societies in human history, yet continues to guard its deepest secrets. At first glance, Banawali seems modest. Excavated remains reveal a pattern of low brick walls, streets laid out in geometric order, and residential areas carefully divided from communal spaces. Yet these seemingly simple structures conceal the sophistication of a people who lived more than 4,000 years ago, during the mature phase of the Indus Valley civilization. As the sun falls across the dusty streets, the alignment of buildings hints at knowledge of urban planning, water management, and social organization that continues to inspire awe. The city's layout reflects a remarkable understanding of order. Streets intersect at near-perfect right angles. Houses are arranged with consistent spacing, and evidence of granaries, workshops, and wells demonstrates an intricate balance between public infrastructure and private life. Scholars note that such planning was not random. It reflects centralized thought and long-term vision. And yet, despite this sophistication, the city abruptly disappears from the historical record. What circumstances led a settlement of such apparent stability to decline? Was it climate change, river course shifts, or socio-political upheaval? Excavations at Banawali have revealed pottery, beads, seals, and terracotta figurines that offer glimpses into daily life. But these artifacts also raise questions. Many seals bear symbolic inscriptions that remain undeciphered, hinting at a written language whose meaning eludes us. Could these symbols represent commerce, governance, or spiritual beliefs? And if so, what knowledge, practices, or histories have been lost with the passing of this civilization? Water management provides another layer of fascination. Banawali's streets were engineered with drainage systems, and some houses contained private baths, reflecting a concern for hygiene and urban order rare for its time. But how were these systems maintained, and what knowledge informed their construction? Did the residents understand principles of sanitation in ways that surpass many later societies? And if so, how did such practical ingenuity coexist with the spiritual or ceremonial life that the artifacts suggest? Trade appears to have played a significant role in Banawali's existence. Items found at the site include semi-precious stones, carnelian beads, and materials not native to the immediate region. These discoveries point to a network of exchange extending across South Asia, perhaps reaching the distant Indus and beyond. Yet the mechanisms of this trade, who controlled it, how goods were valued, and how knowledge and culture traveled along these routes, remain largely speculative. Were there merchant elites orchestrating exchanges, or did commerce function as a communal activity within the city? The construction of Banawali also invites reflection. Bricks are remarkably uniform, hinting at standardized production methods, while some structures indicate multi-story architecture and reinforced walls. The labor required, the technical knowledge employed, and the foresight evident in urban design all suggest a society both sophisticated and highly organized. Yet, unlike some other ancient cities, Banawali leaves little evidence of monumental temples or palaces. Could this indicate a culture focused on practical urban life rather than ceremonial display, or have such structures simply been lost to time? Speculation deepens when we consider the broader historical context. Banawali was part of a civilization that spanned hundreds of kilometers, connected by trade and shared cultural practices. But why did these cities, including Banawali, decline? Environmental stressors, shifts in river courses, or resource depletion are frequently proposed. Some fringe theories suggest societal collapse might have been hastened by invasions or internal conflict, yet archaeological evidence for warfare is minimal. Could the reasons for decline lie beyond our current understanding, encoded in social or environmental dynamics now obscured by millennia? Walking through Banawali today, one senses the invisible threads of human life that once flowed through its streets. Echoes of families, traders, artisans, and children can almost be imagined in the orderly courtyards and narrow lanes. Yet the voices remain faint, leaving only traces in the form of artifacts, brick patterns, and discarded objects. How did people experience daily life here? What aspirations, fears, or rituals guided their movements within this carefully constructed urban environment? The mystery extends to Banawali's symbolic dimensions. Terracotta figurines suggest spiritual practices or ceremonial observances, yet without written records, interpretation is uncertain. Did these objects represent deities, ancestors, or abstract concepts? And how might they relate to the city's broader social and political structures? In a civilization so invested in material order and civic infrastructure, what role did belief, ritual, or cosmology play in shaping community life? Even the simplest details provoke questions. Why did certain streets receive more attention in paving and drainage? Why do some areas show signs of long-term occupation, while others were abandoned more quickly? Were these choices practical, social, or symbolic? And what might they reveal about power, hierarchy, and daily life in one of the world's earliest urban centers? Banawali does not speak in clear sentences. It communicates in fragments. Bricks stacked in alignment, objects buried and preserved, streets laid out with intention, yet leaving ample room for interpretation. Its story is incomplete, yet profoundly evocative. A reminder that human innovation, aspiration, and mystery have always coexisted, even in places where time has erased much of the narrative. As the sun sets over the plains of Haryana and casts long shadows across the ancient streets, we are left to wonder how much of Banawali's knowledge, culture, and history has been lost forever? And how many secrets remain hidden beneath the very soil that sustained this remarkable city, waiting for discovery, or perhaps destined to remain unknowable? From the fertile plains of Banawali, where the Indus Valley civilization once orchestrated streets, drains, and granaries with precision, our exploration now takes us far to the east, across oceans and tropical landscapes, to the island of Sumatra, in present-day Indonesia. Here, in the dense lowland forests crisscrossed by rivers and dotted with volcanic soil, lies the Muaro Jambi complex, a site of extraordinary historical and cultural significance, yet one whose origins and purpose remain shrouded in mystery. Muaro Jambi stretches across nearly 12 square kilometers, a sprawling network of temple compounds, mounds, and ancient drainage systems. From above, the complex resembles a carefully orchestrated constellation of human habitation, ritual space, and natural landscape. The sight of brick temples rising from flat floodplains against the backdrop of thick rainforest conveys a sense of both permanence and concealment. The structures seem to emerge organically from the earth, yet they reflect deliberate planning, skillful architecture, and sustained human labor spanning centuries. Excavations date Muaro Jambi to approximately the 7th to 13th centuries AD, making it a contemporary of powerful maritime kingdoms in Southeast Asia, such as Srivijaya. Its primary construction materials, laterite and red bricks, hint at the ingenuity of its builders, who adapted construction techniques to the tropical climate, seasonal flooding, and dense forests. Massive mounds, some exceeding 15 meters in height, anchor temple compounds and ceremonial areas. Their function, while partially understood, continues to provoke debate. Were they elevated platforms for sacred rituals, territorial markers, or expressions of power intended to impress both locals and distant traders? Unlike the monumental urbanism seen at sites like Banawali or Mapungubwe, Muaro Jambi reflects a different pattern of urban and ritual design. Its temple mounds are interspersed with open courtyards, water channels, and elevated causeways that connect multiple compounds. This suggests that the complex was more than a religious site. It was a center for administration, commerce, and cultural life. Artifacts found in and around the site, ceramic fragments, beads, statues, and tools, support the idea of a dynamic community engaged in trade, ritual, and daily life. Yet the absence of extensive written records leaves critical gaps in our understanding. Some scholars propose that Muaro Jambi was an important center of the Srivijaya Empire, a maritime power that dominated trade across the Malacca Strait and beyond. The site's location along the Batanghari River would have allowed for the movement of goods and people across Sumatra, linking inland production zones with coastal ports. Yet, questions remain. The architectural style and layout of Muaro Jambi diverge in significant ways from other Srivijayan sites. Did the complex serve as a local administrative hub, or was it primarily a ceremonial center drawing pilgrims and elites from across the archipelago? The scale of the site also implies social stratification. Certain temple mounds and compounds are far larger and more elaborately constructed than others, suggesting the presence of an elite class capable of directing labor, resources, and spiritual authority. How were these elites selected, and what systems maintained their control? Was hierarchy based solely on ritual and religious function, or were economic and political factors equally critical? One of the most enigmatic aspects of Muaro Jambi is its water management system. Canals, embankments, and drainage features run throughout the site, channeling seasonal floods and sustaining rice cultivation and other agricultural practices. These engineering solutions demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of hydrology and ecology. Yet, while we can reconstruct how water flowed through the complex, the underlying motivations remain speculative. Were these measures purely functional, or did they also carry symbolic or spiritual significance, reflecting cosmological beliefs about water, life, and order? The religious dimension of Muaro Jambi adds another layer of mystery. The temples predominantly reflect Buddhist influence, with stupas and Buddha statues uncovered during excavations. But their form and placement vary, hinting at localized interpretations of Buddhist practice. Was the complex primarily a monastic center, a pilgrimage destination, or a hybrid that combined spiritual, administrative, and educational roles? Some mounds contain terracotta figures and ritual objects that do not easily fit into standard Buddhist iconography, raising the possibility of syncretic religious practices or older local traditions integrated into the complex. Trade, too, appears to have played a critical role. Items discovered at Muaro Jambi indicate connections with regions as distant as India and the Malay Peninsula, suggesting participation in long-distance exchange networks. How did these connections influence the cultural, spiritual, and political life of the inhabitants? And what insights might these trade networks provide into the spread of knowledge, art, and religious practice across Southeast Asia during this period? Yet for all its grandeur and sophistication, Muaro Jambi eventually fell into obscurity. Unlike some contemporaneous centers, it was not destroyed by conquest, but gradually abandoned, leaving behind an immense archaeological footprint of mud, brick, and stone. Environmental changes, river course shifts, and the rise of new political centers may have contributed to its decline, but no single explanation can fully account for the complexity of its disappearance. The site's abandonment leaves us with a landscape that feels simultaneously alive and silent, a testament to human ingenuity and the transience of civilizations. Walking through Muaro Jambi today, one is struck by the interplay of openness and concealment. Mounds and temples rise through grass and forest undergrowth, partially obscured by vegetation, yet their forms command attention. Paths that once guided monks, traders, and pilgrims now disappear beneath soil and roots. Shadows fall into the recesses of ceremonial spaces, evoking questions about who stood there, what rituals were performed, and what knowledge those rituals embodied. The absence of written records intensifies the enigma. While inscriptions and artifacts provide clues, they cannot convey the full narrative of Muaro Jambi's social, spiritual, and economic life. How did the inhabitants perceive their place in the world? What relationships existed between the elite and commoners, between the sacred and the mundane, and between the human and natural landscapes? Did the builders of Muaro Jambi intend for their city to endure eternally, or was it conceived as a temporary stage in a larger cultural continuum, destined to be reclaimed by forest and time? Even the spatial organization of the complex invites speculation. Certain temple mounds are aligned along cardinal directions or near watercourses, suggesting intentional cosmological mapping. Could these alignments have served as ritual guides, symbolic representations of the universe, or practical markers for agricultural and ceremonial planning? And if so, what do they reveal about the worldview of a society that integrated spiritual, environmental, and civic concerns so seamlessly into its built environment? Muaro Jambi challenges modern assumptions about historical development. Its scale, engineering, and integration of ritual and daily life indicate a level of sophistication that complicates narratives of early Southeast Asian history. The site's mysteries remind us that human societies have long possessed the capacity to blend practical knowledge with symbolic expression, crafting landscapes that speak to both function and meaning in ways that we continue to decode only partially. As the sun sets over the dense lowlands of Sumatra, casting long shadows across the ancient mounds and temples, the ruins seem to breathe a quiet, enduring question. How much of Muaro Jambi's story has been lost, and what secrets of ritual, governance, and human ingenuity remain hidden beneath the forest floor, waiting for those willing to uncover them? From the tropical lowlands of Sumatra, where Muaro Jambi's sprawling mounds rise quietly from the forest floor, our journey now arcs northwest, crossing seas and landscapes to the dense jungles of northern Cambodia. Here, far from the familiar spires of Angkor Wat, lies Koh Ker, a temple complex that defies easy understanding, where the ambitions of kings clash with the whispers of mystery, and the forest slowly reclaims the work of human hands. It is a site of grandeur and enigma, a chapter of Southeast Asian history that has fascinated scholars and adventurers alike for centuries. As one approaches Koh Ker, the first impression is striking. Amid rolling hills and thick canopy, a monumental stepped pyramid pierces the skyline, its silhouette cutting sharply against the morning mist. Known as Prasat Tom, this 7-tiered pyramid rises nearly 36 meters above the surrounding plain, constructed entirely from sandstone and laterite. Its geometric precision and sheer scale are astonishing. Unlike the sprawling horizontal layout of Angkorian temples, Koh Ker's architecture draws the eye vertically, emphasizing height, dominance, and perhaps cosmic symbolism. The complex itself is vast, stretching over 30 square kilometers with more than 180 documented structures, including smaller temples, shrines, and reservoirs. Many structures are connected by elevated causeways, flanked by stone balustrades adorned with carvings that suggest ritualistic, political, and possibly astronomical purposes. But Koh Ker does not yield its story easily. Unlike other Khmer sites, inscriptions are scarce, and much of its history relies on piecing together fragmentary evidence from archaeology, mythology, and epigraphy. Koh Ker's origins are traced to the 10th century AD, during the reign of King Jayavarman IV, who is said to have declared it the capital of the Khmer Empire for a brief but intense period. This sudden shift in royal focus away from Angkor has puzzled historians. What prompted a king to abandon the established capital and construct a monumental city deep in the jungle? Was it political ambition, spiritual vision, or strategic necessity? Perhaps it was all three. And yet, the absence of extensive records leaves these questions open, allowing speculation to thrive alongside documented history. The stepped pyramid itself evokes both admiration and unease. 7 tiers rise in a nearly perfect square, each layer carefully aligned, each stone meticulously placed. Some scholars suggest that the number of tiers and the pyramid's orientation may have cosmological significance, corresponding to celestial bodies or Hindu cosmology's Mount Meru, the axis of the universe in Khmer and Indian thought. Others propose more practical explanations, such as defensive elevation or visibility across the jungle. But the pyramid's form, unprecedented among Khmer monuments, continues to inspire wonder. Surrounding Prasat Tom are numerous smaller temples, some in classical Angkorian style, others unique in design. Linga, a symbol of Shiva, dominate several sites, suggesting that Shaivism was central to Koh Ker's spiritual life. Yet there are also subtle anomalies. Certain reliefs depict obscure deities, hybrid figures, or iconography that is not found in contemporary Khmer art. Could these images reflect local beliefs integrated with mainstream Hinduism? Or do they hint at esoteric rituals that were deliberately hidden from outsiders? The silence of time leaves these questions tantalizingly unresolved. Water management is another feature that underscores both technical skill and the mysteries of Koh Ker. Large reservoirs, known as barrays, and intricate canal systems suggest a sophisticated understanding of hydrology. These structures allowed for irrigation, ceremonial water rituals, and control of seasonal flooding. But their precise functions remain partially speculative. Were they primarily utilitarian, or did they also serve symbolic purposes, representing cosmic waters in alignment with temple orientation? And how did such ambitious engineering projects coexist with the intense labor required to construct the pyramid itself? Trade and connectivity may also have played a role. Artifacts found at Koh Ker, ceramics, sculptures, and imported materials, hint at contact with other regions of Southeast Asia and possibly even the broader Indian Ocean network. How did these connections shape the city's spiritual and political life? Did King Jayavarman IV envision Koh Ker as not only a political capital, but also a hub of regional influence, drawing elites, pilgrims, and traders alike? Or was its remote location intended to assert independence from traditional centers of power, a demonstration of autonomy cloaked in monumental architecture? The abrupt abandonment of Koh Ker adds another layer to its enigma. By the mid-10th century, the site was largely deserted, and the capital shifted back to Angkor. Unlike some cities destroyed by conquest, Koh Ker seems to have been left intact yet largely unused. What factors led to this sudden decline? Political instability, environmental challenges, or changing trade patterns could all have contributed, but the evidence is fragmentary. In the absence of clear documentation, the narrative remains speculative, allowing the imagination to fill gaps in the historical record. Walking through the overgrown causeways and temple terraces today, one senses both majesty and melancholy. Stone blocks, some intricately carved, now crumble under the weight of time and vegetation. Shadows fall across long-abandoned courtyards, and the dense jungle envelops structures that were once central to political, spiritual, and civic life. How many generations labored here? What conversations, ceremonies, and conflicts unfolded within these walls? And what knowledge, rituals, or cultural practices vanished with the city's desertion? Even the site's spatial organization invites interpretation. Prasat Tom's alignment and positioning in relation to other temples suggest deliberate cosmological mapping. Certain temples face cardinal points, water channels intersect with causeways, and some enclosures appear to frame celestial events. Could this represent an integrated system of science, religion, and governance, where architecture itself was a medium for cosmic understanding? And if so, what does it reveal about the mindset of rulers and priests in this ambitious, yet ephemeral capital? Koh Ker challenges our assumptions about power, spirituality, and architectural intent. Its scale, complexity, and abrupt disappearance suggest a civilization capable of astonishing feats, yet vulnerable to the pressures of politics, environment, and circumstance. It reminds us that historical memory is fragile. Even a city of monumental stone can vanish from collective awareness, leaving only the stones themselves and faint echoes in the forest. As the sun sinks behind the verdant hills and the jungle reclaims corridors, temples, and terraces, Koh Ker presents a final, lingering question. What secrets of ambition, devotion, and human ingenuity remain hidden in the shadows of its stone pyramid? How much of its story has been swallowed by time, and how much waits still to be discovered, understood, or imagined by those who venture into its mysterious, silent heart? From the jungle-wrapped temples of Koh Ker, where stone pyramids rise through the Cambodian canopy like forgotten signals from another age, our journey now moves westward once again, crossing seas, passing continents, and arriving in a landscape shaped not by jungle or desert, but by mist, stone, and time itself. In the quiet countryside of County Meath, Ireland, the land undulates gently beneath low gray skies. Fields stretch outward in soft green waves, divided by hedgerows and stone fences that seem almost modern in comparison to what lies at the heart of this place. And then, almost without warning, the ground begins to rise. A grassy mound, long and low, stretches across the landscape like a sleeping giant. At its center lies an entrance carved into stone, dark, narrow, and silent. This is Dowth, one of the great passage tombs of the Boyne Valley, and one of the oldest surviving monuments on the island of Ireland. Dowth is estimated to have been constructed around 3200 BC, making it older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza. It forms part of a larger prehistoric complex alongside Newgrange and Dowth, all clustered within the fertile bend of the River Boyne. Together, these monuments represent a Neolithic landscape of extraordinary sophistication, where architecture, astronomy, and ritual appear to converge in ways that still defy full explanation. At first glance, Dowth appears simpler than its more famous neighbor, Newgrange. It is less restored, more weathered, and less visually dramatic. But this apparent simplicity is deceptive. Beneath its earthen mound lies a carefully constructed passage, leading into a central chamber built from massive stone slabs. Some of these stones are decorated with carved motifs, spirals, lozenges, and concentric circles, etched with a precision that suggests both intention and meaning. What did these symbols represent? Mainstream archaeological interpretations suggest they may relate to cosmology, cycles of nature, or ritual symbolism tied to seasonal change. Yet, no written language survives from this period in Ireland, leaving the carvings open to interpretation. Were they markers of astronomical knowledge, spiritual expressions, or something more complex? A system of meaning now entirely lost? Unlike modern structures designed for habitation, Dowth was not built for daily life. It was constructed for the dead, or perhaps more accurately, for the relationship between the living and the dead. Human remains have been discovered within and around the site, though not always in ways that suggest simple burial. Some deposits appear ritualized, placed with care and intention that goes beyond functional interment. The passage itself is carefully aligned, though not as precisely oriented as Newgrange. At Newgrange, sunlight penetrates the inner chamber during the winter solstice in a dramatic display of light and shadow. Dowth, however, presents a more ambiguous alignment. Some researchers suggest it may also relate to solar or lunar cycles, but the evidence is less clear, more fragmented. Was its design intentionally different, or has time altered what was once a precise astronomical function? This uncertainty opens the door to deeper questions. Why would two monuments built within the same cultural landscape exhibit different levels of astronomical precision? Was Dowth serving a different ritual purpose than its neighbors? Or could it represent an earlier or experimental phase of Neolithic design, where ideas about time, cosmos, and architecture were still evolving? Inside the chamber, the atmosphere changes noticeably. The temperature drops, the light disappears, and sound becomes muted, absorbed by stone that has stood for more than 5 millennia. It is easy to imagine that this transition from open landscape to enclosed darkness was intentional, not just architectural, but experiential. A movement from the world of the living into a space of transformation, memory, or perhaps communication with something beyond human perception. Some researchers have suggested that passage tombs like Dowth were not merely burial sites, but ritual theaters. Spaces where seasonal ceremonies may have been performed, aligning human activity with celestial cycles. Others propose that they functioned as territorial markers, symbols of communal identity etched into the landscape by Neolithic societies, asserting their presence across generations. Yet neither explanation fully captures the emotional weight of the site. Dowth feels less like a structure and more like a threshold. One of its most intriguing aspects lies in its history of disturbance. Unlike Newgrange, which was heavily restored in the modern era, Dowth suffered significant damage during later centuries, including partial collapse and excavation that removed much of its original material. Medieval accounts even suggest that treasure hunters and early antiquarians may have altered or destroyed parts of the site before modern archaeology could fully document it. What knowledge might have been lost during these interventions? And how much of Dowth's original structure still lies buried beneath layers of reconstruction and collapse? There are also local traditions that add another dimension to its mystery. Folklore from the region speaks of hidden chambers beneath the mound, sometimes referred to as entrances to otherworldly realms. In Irish mythological tradition, mounds such as Dowth were often associated with the sea, supernatural beings said to inhabit underground spaces. While these stories are not archaeological evidence, they reflect a cultural memory that has persisted for thousands of years. Why did such interpretations endure so strongly around these sites in particular? Could it be that the landscape itself encouraged such beliefs? Even today, walking across the Boyne Valley, the distribution of passage tombs creates a sense of intentional design at a landscape scale. Dowth, Newgrange, and Knowth are not isolated monuments. They are part of a broader spatial pattern that suggests coordination, planning, and shared cultural understanding. Some researchers propose that the entire valley may have functioned as a ritual landscape, aligned with astronomical events and seasonal cycles. But without written records, the precise nature of this system remains elusive. The engineering of Dowth itself also raises questions. The construction required the movement of massive stone slabs, some transported from considerable distances. The precision with which these stones were placed suggests organized labor and advanced understanding of structural stability. Yet the absence of clear domestic settlement evidence nearby complicates our understanding of who built it and how they organized such an effort. Were the builders seasonal communities, ritual specialists, or part of a larger, more permanent social structure that has left little trace? And then there is the chamber itself. Within its darkness, the carvings on stone seem to shift depending on angle and light. Spirals appear to move. Geometric patterns seem to deepen or flatten. Whether this is a trick of perception or intentional design, it adds to the sense that Dowth was not meant to be understood in a single way. It was meant to be experienced, perhaps differently depending on time, season, or ritual context. Even now, standing at its entrance, there is a sense that something remains just out of reach. Not hidden in the sense of buried treasure, but hidden in meaning, encoded in architecture, orientation, and symbolism that no longer fully translates into modern understanding. As the wind moves across the Boyne Valley and the grass ripples over the ancient mound, Dowth remains as it has for thousands of years, quiet, sealed, and contemplative, a structure that remembers more than it reveals. And so the question lingers in the stillness of the Irish landscape. What did those who built Dowth truly understand about time, death, and the sky above them? And how much of that understanding has been lost beneath the weight of 5,000 years? From the mist-laden fields of Ireland, where Dowth's ancient mound guards secrets older than written history, we now return to the expansive plains of South Asia, where the ruins of a far earlier civilization lie scattered along the dry riverbeds of Gujarat. Here, amidst the arid soil and shifting sands, we find Surkotada, a lesser-known site of the Indus Valley civilization, quietly defying assumptions about urban planning, trade, and human ingenuity over 4,000 years ago. Unlike the monumental tombs of Ireland, Surkotada offers a more intimate encounter with the daily lives of one of the world's earliest complex societies, yet it conceals mysteries that still intrigue archaeologists and historians alike. Surkotada's ruins are understated but deliberate. From a distance, one sees low rectangular mounds, their outlines marked by subtle rises in the landscape. As you approach, the meticulous layout of walls, streets, and foundations becomes apparent. Built around 2100 to 1700 BC, during the mature Harappan period, the settlement exhibits the characteristic hallmarks of Indus urban design: planned streets, fortifications, and standardized bricks. Yet even within this structured environment, Surkotada retains an air of mystery. Its fortified walls, composed of mud and baked bricks, suggest a need for defense. But against whom? And why did this modestly sized outpost exist on the edge of a sprawling civilization known for its relative stability and lack of fortifications? Excavations reveal two major sectors, the citadel and the lower town. The citadel, slightly elevated, served as the administrative and ceremonial hub, while the lower town housed artisans, merchants, and residents. The careful partitioning of space indicates a sophisticated understanding of social organization, and yet very little about the daily lives of these inhabitants has been preserved in written form. The Indus script, still undeciphered, leaves us without the personal voices of Surkotada's residents, forcing us to rely entirely on the material traces they left behind: pottery, tools, beads, and the occasional ritual object. Perhaps the most remarkable discovery at Surkotada is its evidence of horse remains. For decades, scholars debated the presence of horses in the Indus Valley civilization, as their existence has implications for trade, warfare, and mobility. The bones found here suggest that the inhabitants may have had knowledge of domesticated horses long before they appeared widely in other parts of the subcontinent. Could Surkotada have been a critical node in the movement of animals, ideas, or technologies? Or does it represent an isolated experiment in animal domestication that ultimately left few traces beyond this one site? Even the city's fortifications provoke questions. The walls form perfect rectangles, and gateways are carefully aligned with main thoroughfares. Some archaeologists argue that this reflects defensive concerns, yet others note that Surkotada's location is not particularly strategic in the context of military conflict. Could these walls have been symbolic, serving as markers of authority or social hierarchy rather than instruments of protection? And what does this tell us about the balance between security, ritual, and governance in the Indus urban mindset? Water management, a hallmark of Indus urbanism, is evident at Surkotada as well. Brick-lined channels and small reservoirs indicate the settlement's ability to control seasonal flooding and distribute water efficiently. Such infrastructure suggests advanced engineering knowledge, yet much about how water interacted with daily life, agriculture, and ritual remains speculative. Did these systems serve only practical purposes, or were they integrated into a larger cosmological understanding, as some scholars propose for other Harappan sites? The material culture of Surkotada is both mundane and extraordinary. Pottery vessels bear intricate geometric designs. Beads made from semi-precious stones hint at trade networks spanning hundreds of kilometers, and seals engraved with enigmatic symbols point to commercial or administrative practices. Yet despite these signs of sophistication, the site has yielded surprisingly few human burials. Was this deliberate, reflecting unique funerary customs, or simply the result of erosion and time? And what might the absence of burials indicate about social structure, spiritual beliefs, or the impermanence of this settlement? As we examine the streets and foundations, a curious sense of continuity emerges. Surkotada is both intimately human and frustratingly opaque. Walls and streets reflect careful planning, while the lack of textual explanation leaves vast interpretive gaps. Did artisans who shaped each brick and pot consider themselves part of a civilization stretching across hundreds of sites, or did they exist in isolated pockets, connected only by shared cultural practices? The physical layout suggests a population accustomed to coordination and hierarchy, yet the human stories remain largely silent, waiting to be inferred from stones and soil. Even the geographic context adds intrigue. Surkotada lies near the seasonal courses of the Indus and its tributaries, a location that provided water, trade access, and fertile soil, but also exposed the settlement to climatic variability. How did the inhabitants adapt to these environmental pressures? Did shifts in river patterns contribute to the city's eventual decline, or did social and political factors outweigh ecological ones? And why, despite its clear planning and fortification, did Surkotada not evolve into a larger urban center like Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa? The small, enigmatic seals discovered at the site offer another layer of mystery. Unlike the widely distributed Indus seals found at major trade hubs, Surkotada's seals are sparse and often fragmentary, suggesting local production or specialized use. Were these symbols administrative markers, religious talismans, or tools of communication lost to time? Their precise meaning remains a riddle, and the undeciphered Indus script ensures that every attempt at interpretation is necessarily tentative. Walking across the ruins today, the wind moves gently over sun-bleached bricks and low mounds. Despite millennia of neglect, Surkotada exudes a quiet resilience. The settlement's compact streets, fortified walls, and carefully aligned structures speak to human ingenuity, planning, and adaptation. And yet, for all the evidence left behind, the human intentions, beliefs, and daily rhythms remain frustratingly elusive. Surkotada challenges assumptions about the Indus civilization. It reminds us that urbanism was not uniform, that sites could be experimental, isolated, or specialized in ways not fully understood. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How much of a civilization's story is preserved, and how much disappears silently with soil, stone, and forgotten rituals? What can a small, fortified settlement tell us about trade, governance, and cosmology in a culture otherwise known for its scale and sophistication? As the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the brick-lined streets, one cannot help but wonder, how did the people of Surkotada experience their world, and what knowledge, traditions, or innovations vanished with the site's abandonment? Does this settlement, quiet and understated, hold keys to understanding broader Indus urbanism, or is it a fragment that will forever tantalize us with unanswered questions? In the stillness of the modern plain, Surkotada endures, its stones a testament to human ambition, its silence a challenge to our curiosity. And perhaps, just perhaps, beneath the dust and vegetation, further secrets await those willing to look closely, think deeply, and accept that some mysteries of the ancient world may never be fully explained. From the brick-lined streets and quiet mounds of Surkotada, where the Indus Valley whispers of long-lost urban order and forgotten lives, we journey northwest, across deserts and mountains, to the Iranian Plateau, a land of dust, wind, and ancient human ambition. Here, amidst the rolling plains near the modern city of Kashan, rises a pair of mounds, modest in appearance but monumental in significance, the twin tells of Tepe Sialk. Unlike the sprawling Indus settlements, Tepe Sialk offers a layered vision of human history, each stratum a silent witness to the dawn of urbanization and the mysteries of early civilization. The site of Tepe Sialk consists of two main mounds, the northern and southern tells, rising from the flat plain like ancient sentinels. From afar, they appear as simple hills, their contours softened by millennia of erosion. But under this unassuming exterior lies a labyrinth of human ingenuity, ambition, and ritual practice, stretching back to the 5th millennium BC. Excavations reveal that Tepe Sialk is among the earliest known sites of proto-urban settlement in the Iranian plateau, with evidence of mud brick architecture, pottery kilns, and burial practices that hint at complex social organization. Walking across the plain today, one cannot help but notice the wind's eerie consistency, moving as though it were tracing the contours of a landscape long inhabited. The northern mound, larger and more extensively excavated, reveals successive layers of settlement, each layer representing generations of humans striving to organize their world, cultivate land, and build structures that would outlast them. Early layers, dating to around 5,500 BC, consist of simple rectangular mud brick houses, their walls reinforced with compacted clay and occasionally adorned with rudimentary decorative motifs. Even in these earliest structures, there is evidence of deliberate planning. Streets, courtyard spaces, and storage facilities suggest a community acutely aware of space and its social significance. But Tepe Sialk is far more than an ordinary Neolithic settlement. Beneath its domestic facades lie cemeteries and burial chambers, some containing elaborate grave goods. Clay figurines, intricately painted pottery, and stone tools accompany the deceased, suggesting a belief system that extends beyond mere survival. What rituals were performed here? What stories were told to ensure that the dead were honored, protected, or perhaps guided into the next world? We may never know, but the artifacts hint at a culture steeped in symbolism and layered meaning. As the centuries progressed, the inhabitants of Tepe Sialk demonstrated remarkable adaptability. By the 4th millennium BC, the site shows evidence of metallurgical activity. Small furnaces and slag remnants indicate early experimentation with copper, hinting at technological knowledge that would later underpin the great civilizations of Mesopotamia and beyond. This raises compelling questions. Did Tepe Sialk serve as a regional hub of innovation, transmitting knowledge along trade routes stretching across the plateau? Or was it an isolated laboratory of early technological exploration, a small community testing the limits of human ingenuity in relative seclusion? The southern mound, less excavated but equally compelling, contains layers that suggest ritualized activity. Circular structures, deliberately constructed alignments, and what appear to be symbolic artifacts hint at ceremonial use. Some scholars speculate that these areas were centers for solar or lunar observation, echoing similar practices at contemporary sites in Mesopotamia. Could the people of Tepe Sialk have been attempting to understand celestial patterns, connecting the cycles of the heavens to the rhythms of agriculture, timekeeping, or spiritual life? Even the construction techniques provoke curiosity. Massive mud brick walls, sometimes exceeding 2 meters in thickness, were built with such precision that modern engineers struggle to replicate them without the benefit of modern tools. How did a society so early in urban development achieve this level of structural sophistication? Was knowledge passed down through generations, or did each generation reinvent methods independently? And how much of that knowledge has been lost, leaving only the stones themselves to hint at ingenuity long forgotten? Tepe Sialk also presents one of archaeology's enduring enigmas, evidence of sudden abandonment and reoccupation. Layers of ash, destruction, and reburial suggest episodes of conflict, environmental stress, or societal collapse. Yet there are few written records, no inscriptions to tell the story. Was the site attacked, or did its inhabitants leave voluntarily, driven by shifting rivers, depleted soils, or economic pressures? And why was it eventually reoccupied, sometimes centuries later, leaving behind new layers atop the old, a palimpsest of human ambition and impermanence? The pottery found at Tepe Sialk is particularly noteworthy. Vessels exhibit both utilitarian and artistic qualities, with painted motifs ranging from geometric patterns to stylized representations of animals and humans. Some of these designs appear unique to the site, while others bear resemblance to artifacts found hundreds of kilometers away. This suggests that Tepe Sialk was connected to broader networks of exchange and cultural influence, but the full scope of these connections remains uncertain. Were these items traded for practical goods, ceremonial use, or perhaps as symbols of social alliance and status? Further intrigue comes from the site's subterranean tombs. Some graves contain multiple individuals, their bones carefully positioned alongside grave goods that indicate social stratification or symbolic significance. Yet other tombs are far simpler, almost anonymous, highlighting disparities that may reflect the complexities of social organization in early urban life. How did the people of Tepe Sialk understand hierarchy, identity, or the role of the individual within the collective? And then, there is the very earth of Tepe Sialk itself. Archaeological layers tell a story of adaptation to environmental change, periods of drought, shifting river courses, and soil exhaustion. Yet the city endured for centuries, a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. What strategies allowed its inhabitants to survive in a challenging landscape? Did they manipulate irrigation, develop crop rotation, or create social systems capable of sustaining the settlement through ecological pressures? Walking among the partially excavated ruins today, one is struck by a sense of layered mystery. Tepe Sialk is not a single story, but a mosaic of human endeavor across centuries. It is both known and unknowable, a place where daily life, ritual, trade, and technology intersect, yet where the meaning of many actions is lost to time. Unlike some monumental sites, it offers no grand spectacle, no dramatic alignment with the sun or moon, no colossal statues. Its wonder is quieter, more intimate, revealed in the subtleties of brickwork, the placement of a grave, the design of a vessel, the alignment of walls that have survived thousands of years. In the shadows of these mounds, one cannot help but wonder, what did the builders of Tepe Sialk see when they looked across the plains? How did they understand their place in the world, between desert and river, earth and sky? And what knowledge, beliefs, or practices were lost when the mounds fell silent? Even now, Tepe Sialk challenges our assumptions about early urbanism. It invites us to consider not only the technological achievements of early societies, but also their social, spiritual, and intellectual dimensions. The site endures as a reminder that human ambition, creativity, and curiosity are ancient, often hidden, and sometimes incompletely understood. As the sun sets over the Iranian plateau, casting long shadows across the mounds, we are left with questions that persist across millennia. What secrets remain buried beneath the layers of clay and brick? What stories of life, death, and ingenuity are still waiting to be uncovered? And how much of the knowledge and culture of Tepe Sialk lies just beyond our reach, teasing the imagination with mysteries that refuse to be fully explained? From the windswept plains of Tepe Sialk, where early urban settlements whisper of human ingenuity and layered history, we now turn southeast, across oceans and continents, to the dense tropical rainforests of Borneo. Hidden within these forests lies one of Southeast Asia's most enigmatic archaeological sites, Niah Cave. At first glance, Niah is a darkened maw in limestone cliffs, a shadowed doorway into the past. Yet within its depths lie secrets that have fascinated anthropologists, archaeologists, and explorers for decades. The burials that hint at the earliest known human occupation in the region, challenging our understanding of migration, culture, and mortality. Approaching Niah Cave, the entrance seems almost unremarkable, a wide limestone opening, partially obscured by hanging vines and the humid breath of the jungle. But once inside, the scale of the site becomes apparent. The main chamber stretches tens of meters, its walls streaked with mineral deposits, the floor layered with millennia of sediment. It is here, amidst the echoing darkness and the damp, earthy scent of centuries, that the first traces of human life were found, including skeletal remains dating back approximately 40,000 years. These burials are some of the oldest in Southeast Asia, placing Niah Cave at the center of debates about human dispersal and prehistoric society. The burials themselves are striking in their simplicity and solemnity. Skeletons lie in shallow graves or beneath layers of earth, sometimes accompanied by fragments of pottery or stone tools. Some appear to have been intentionally positioned, their limbs arranged with care, suggesting ritualized practice and a nascent understanding of death and remembrance. Yet for all this evidence of deliberate care, much about these individuals remains unknowable. Their names, their stories, their experiences of life and death are lost to time. What compelled these early humans to select this cave as a place of rest? Was it chosen for its shelter, its symbolic resonance, or something that we can no longer perceive? Among the most famous discoveries is the deep skull, a remarkably preserved human cranium found deep within the cave's deposits. This skull, radiocarbon dated to roughly 40,000 years ago, challenged prior assumptions about human migration into Southeast Asia. Its features sparked debates over the origins of modern populations in the region, hinting at complex interweaving of groups and cultures long before written records or formal settlements. The implications are profound. This is not merely a site of local significance. It is a window into human movement, adaptation, and survival during the Pleistocene. Yet even with such monumental finds, the cave guards as many questions as it answers. Stratigraphy reveals periods of intensive occupation, interspersed with gaps that suggest abandonment or environmental change. Did shifts in climate, rainfall, or vegetation drive humans away, only to return centuries later? Or do these gaps reflect changes in the cave's ritual or social use, a transition from living space to sacred burial ground. The sediment itself, layered like a natural archive, holds clues that scientists continue to decipher, teasing out patterns of human activity, tool use, and dietary practices. Artifacts found alongside the burials deepen the mystery. Simple stone implements, crafted with skill yet bearing regional idiosyncrasies, point to a culture adept at survival and innovation. Some implements suggest hunting and foraging, while others hint at symbolic or ceremonial functions. Pottery, though sparse and fragmented, indicates that these humans were not merely scavengers, but people capable of creating objects with purpose, perhaps as offerings or markers of social identity. The objects, though silent, speak of lives both ordinary and extraordinary, lives intertwined with the cave's enduring presence. The spatial organization of burials is itself curious. Skeletons are not uniformly distributed. Some lie close to the entrance, others deep in the darkness of side chambers. Were these choices deliberate, reflecting social hierarchy, spiritual beliefs, or practical considerations? Or were they the result of centuries of layered use, with later inhabitants unknowingly interring their dead above earlier remains? Each layer adds complexity, creating a tapestry of human life and death that resists simple explanation. Environmental context adds another layer to the enigma. Niah Cave's location at the edge of a tropical rainforest would have offered abundant resources, fresh water, plant foods, and game, but also challenges, from flooding to predators to disease. How did these early humans navigate such a landscape? And how did their environment shape their social structures, tool use, and burial practices? Did the cave serve primarily as shelter, ritual space, or both? And how did these choices influence survival over tens of thousands of years? The burials also pose anthropological puzzles. Variations in skull shape, body size, and associated artifacts suggest a population both diverse and dynamic. Were these differences the result of migration, intermarriage, or evolving cultural practices? And what can they tell us about the relationship between humans and their environment, the interplay between biology and culture in shaping early societies? Even the cave itself seems to participate in the mystery. Its limestone walls echo with the past. Mineral deposits form patterns reminiscent of abstract art, and shadows play across ancient bones and tools. Did early humans perceive the cave as sacred, a portal to the spiritual or ancestral world? Did the darkness and enclosure of Niah influence the rituals performed there, shaping beliefs about life, death, and the beyond? Such questions remain speculative, yet the site's atmosphere suggests intentionality and reverence, a recognition of the cave's power and permanence. Archaeologists continue to uncover new layers, sometimes literally, with each season revealing small but significant details, charred bones, fragmented pottery, or traces of fire. Each find adds a piece to the puzzle, yet reinforces the incompleteness of our understanding. Niah Cave is not a static museum, but a living archive of human experience, its contents constantly reframed as techniques improve and questions evolve. Walking through the main chamber today, one is struck by a sense of continuity and fragility. The cave has sheltered humans for tens of thousands of years, yet it remains subject to the forces of nature and time. Its burials, tools, and traces of habitation testify to resilience, ingenuity, and mortality alike. And despite centuries of study, the cave retains an aura of mystery, a quiet challenge to our desire for definitive answers. Niah Cave reminds us that human history is not always linear or clear. It forces us to reckon with gaps, uncertainties, and ambiguities. Each burial, each artifact, each layer of sediment is a reminder that our understanding of the past is partial, shaped by preservation, interpretation, and chance. What did these people see when they looked at the forest outside the cave? How did they conceive of life, death, and the forces beyond their comprehension? And what stories, practices, or knowledge were lost to time, leaving only the bones and stones behind? As we leave the shadows of Niah Cave and step back into the sunlight and humidity of Borneo, the mysteries linger. The cave's burials speak of humanity's earliest attempts to make sense of mortality, community, and the natural world. They challenge us to think deeply about migration, adaptation, and cultural expression. And they invite us to imagine the lives, fears, and aspirations of people who walked this earth tens of thousands of years ago, people whose voices are silent, but whose presence remains profoundly felt. In the quiet of the cave, with its echoes of footsteps long gone and the faint imprint of human hands on stone, one question persists. How much of our human story is hidden in places like Niah, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to challenge what we think we know about the past? And what will future discoveries reveal about the lives and deaths of those who came before us, who shaped the story of humanity in ways we are only beginning to understand? From the humid shadows of Niah Cave, where centuries of burials speak to the earliest human presence in Southeast Asia, we now turn our gaze westward, across deserts and plateaus, to the rugged landscapes of southeastern Iran. Here, amid the arid plains and the life-giving flow of the Bampur River, lies a site that has quietly shaped our understanding of ancient trade, settlement, and culture: the Bampur Archaeological Site. Unlike the dark, enclosed sanctity of Niah Cave, Bampur sprawls across the sun-bleached hills and river terraces, a network of mounds and ruins that tells a story of human ambition, ingenuity, and mystery stretching back to the 5th millennium BC. At first glance, Bampur seems almost unremarkable, a scattering of low mounds rising from an endless expanse of desert, punctuated by the occasional tamarisk or date palm. Yet each mound represents layers upon layers of human occupation, each stratum a silent witness to centuries of settlement, trade, and cultural development. Excavations reveal mud brick structures, fortifications, and ceremonial areas, each offering tantalizing glimpses into lives that thrived in a challenging and often unforgiving environment. The site is part of the larger Bampur Valley complex, which was a crucial corridor connecting Mesopotamia, the Iranian Plateau, and the Indus Valley, positioning it as a crossroads of early civilizations. The earliest occupation at Bampur dates back to around 3000 BC, though some evidence suggests that human activity in the valley may have begun centuries earlier. Archaeologists have uncovered remains of residential structures, storage facilities, and pottery kilns, all indicating a community skilled in both survival and craftsmanship. The mud brick architecture is notable for its precision: walls thick enough to withstand the desert sun and sudden storms, courtyards designed to catch breezes, and communal spaces hinting at organized social structures. How did these early inhabitants achieve such architectural sophistication in isolation? Were they influenced by distant cultures, or did necessity alone drive these innovations? Bampur's artifacts further deepen the mystery. Pottery, often decorated with geometric patterns, depicts a culture attentive to both utility and aesthetics. Some vessels suggest ceremonial or symbolic use, hinting at belief systems that remain largely unknown. Stone and copper tools indicate advanced metallurgical knowledge, while beads and ornaments point to a society engaged in trade and personal expression. Indeed, the site's strategic location suggests that it was part of a network of trade routes connecting distant regions. What goods, ideas, and technologies passed through Bampur, and how did these interactions shape the social and cultural life of its inhabitants? Perhaps most intriguing is the evidence of sudden cultural shifts. Archaeological layers reveal periods of intensive occupation, followed by apparent abandonment or change in settlement patterns. Were these disruptions caused by environmental shifts, droughts, floods, or shifting river courses, or by human conflict, migration, or economic collapse. Some scholars propose that Bampur may have been a regional hub whose fortunes rose and fell in concert with distant civilizations, yet the specifics remain elusive. The very earth of Bampur seems to whisper of cycles of growth, decline, and transformation, leaving researchers to piece together a narrative from fragments of brick, pottery, and bone. Burials at Bampur are particularly compelling. Graves, sometimes accompanied by objects such as jewelry, pottery, or tools, indicate a society that treated death with careful attention. Some burials suggest hierarchical structures, with certain individuals receiving more elaborate rites than others. Yet even here, anomalies appear. Skeletons positioned in unusual postures, graves left empty of goods, or evidence of reburial. Did these practices reflect spiritual beliefs, social distinctions, or practical considerations unknown to us? The patterns defy simple interpretation, inviting questions about the values, fears, and rituals of a people long gone. Trade and cultural connections further complicate the story. Bampur artifacts bear striking similarities to those found in regions as far-flung as the Indus Valley and Mesopotamia. Some pottery motifs resemble those used in distant cities, while ornaments and metal objects suggest exchange networks that spanned hundreds of kilometers. How did these connections operate in a time without formal roads or written contracts? Did travelers and merchants follow the natural contours of the river valleys, or were networks established through long-standing social and familial ties? And what knowledge, techniques, or beliefs were exchanged along these invisible threads? The site's fortifications and layout also raise intriguing questions. Some mounds appear to have defensive walls, suggesting concern with protection, yet the scale of these fortifications seems inconsistent with known threats. Were these walls built against human enemies, environmental pressures, or perhaps symbolic boundaries marking sacred or communal spaces? The ambiguity of purpose invites speculation, reminding us that ancient societies often combined practical, spiritual, and social considerations in ways we may never fully understand. Equally mysterious is the interaction between Bampur's inhabitants and their environment. Situated along the Bampur River, the site benefited from a reliable water source in an otherwise arid region. Archaeological evidence indicates careful management of water, including channels, storage facilities, and strategic settlement placement. Did these innovations arise from trial and error, accumulated knowledge, or guidance from neighboring regions? And how did changing climate, river shifts, or soil depletion affect the settlement over time, influencing patterns of occupation, agriculture, and daily life? One cannot explore Bampur without considering its place in human history more broadly. It is a site that bridges cultural worlds, linking the deserts of Iran with Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. It challenges assumptions about isolation in ancient societies, demonstrating that even in relatively remote landscapes, human ingenuity, trade, and cultural exchange flourished. Yet it also resists definitive interpretation. The exact reasons for its rise, its periods of abandonment, and the ultimate fate of its inhabitants remain shrouded in uncertainty. Walking among the ruins today, the desert wind carrying whispers of centuries past, one feels the weight of human endeavor and the persistence of mystery. Mud brick walls, pottery shards, and burial sites serve as tangible remnants of lives lived under sun and sky, yet they reveal only fragments of a larger story. How did the people of Bampur perceive themselves, their community, and their place in a vast, interconnected world? What knowledge was preserved, and what was lost to time, leaving only questions for us to ponder? Bampur challenges us to think deeply about continuity and change, survival and ambition. It asks us to imagine a society negotiating the harsh realities of desert life while maintaining connections with distant regions, balancing the practical and the symbolic, the everyday and the extraordinary. Its artifacts, burials, and architectural remnants speak to ingenuity, resilience, and cultural expression. Yet they also remind us that the full story may forever elude our grasp. As the sun dips low over the Bampur River, casting long shadows across the ancient mounds, we are left with questions that span millennia. What prompted the rise of this settlement in such a challenging environment? How did trade, ritual, and community life intertwine here? And what secrets remain buried beneath layers of sand, clay, and time, waiting to challenge our understanding of early civilizations in this enigmatic region? In this quiet landscape, one realizes that Bampur is more than an archaeological site. It is a testament to human curiosity, adaptation, and the enduring allure of mystery. And as we continue to explore the scattered remnants of our past, we are reminded that every mound, every artifact, every burial offers not only answers but also new questions, keeping the past alive and the present endlessly intrigued. From the wind-swept ruins of Bampur, where desert trade routes once stitched together distant worlds, and the silence of abandoned mounds still carries echoes of ancient movement, our journey now turns northwest across continents and seas. The landscape changes once more. Arid plains give way to deep blue waters, and beyond them, the island of Sardinia rises from the Mediterranean like a stone fragment of forgotten time. Here, among rolling hills and rugged terrain, stands one of the most remarkable prehistoric constructions in Europe, Nuraxi. At first sight, Nuraxi appears almost organic, as if it were not built but grown from the earth itself. Massive basalt stones form a central tower, surrounded by a complex labyrinth of smaller towers and defensive walls. The entire structure sits within a wider village of circular stone huts, their foundations still visible, arranged in a pattern that suggests both order and adaptation to the landscape. The site, located near the modern town of Barumini, is the most famous example of the Nuragic civilization, a culture that flourished in Sardinia from roughly 1800 BC to the Roman period. The central tower, or Nurag, rises in stepped layers, each level slightly smaller than the one below, creating a tapering silhouette that once reached higher than it does today. Built entirely without mortar, the stones are so precisely placed that they have withstood thousands of years of wind, rain, and seismic activity. How such structural precision was achieved using only Bronze Age tools remains one of the enduring questions of Mediterranean archaeology. Was it purely empirical knowledge passed down through generations, or did the Nuragic builders possess architectural understanding that has since been lost? Around the main tower, additional structures form a fortified complex. These secondary towers are connected by thick curtain walls, creating a defensive system that suggests both strategic planning and an awareness of potential conflict. Narrow passageways, hidden staircases, and elevated platforms indicate that Nuraxi was not only a settlement, but also a stronghold. Yet its design is not purely military. Within its walls, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of domestic life, storage jars, hearths, tools, and remnants of food preparation. This duality raises questions. Was Nuraxi primarily a fortress, a political center, a ritual site, or a combination of all three? The surrounding village adds another layer to the mystery. Hundreds of circular stone huts once formed a thriving community around the Nurag. These dwellings, constructed with thick stone bases and likely topped with wooden or thatched roofs, suggest a society organized around both communal living and centralized authority. But what governed this society? The Nuragic civilization left behind no written records that can be clearly deciphered. Without texts, we are left to interpret power structures through architecture alone. Was authority concentrated in the central tower, or distributed among clans and families spread across the village? Excavations at Nuraxi have revealed artifacts that hint at a complex and far-reaching culture. Bronze figurines depicting warriors, animals, and symbolic figures suggest a rich spiritual or mythological tradition. These so-called bronzetti are highly stylized, yet expressive, showing individuals with weapons, shields, and distinctive clothing. Some figures appear almost ceremonial, while others suggest daily life or social hierarchy. What stories were these objects meant to tell? Were they offerings, representations of deities, or markers of social identity? Ceramic vessels discovered at the site show both utilitarian and decorative qualities. Some are simple and functional, while others bear intricate patterns that may have held symbolic meaning. The presence of imported materials, such as obsidian from distant volcanic islands, indicates that Nuraxi was not an isolated settlement. Instead, it participated in broader Mediterranean exchange networks. But the full extent of these connections remains uncertain. How far did Nuragic trade extend? And what ideas, beliefs, or technologies traveled alongside physical goods? One of the most intriguing aspects of Nuraxi is its construction phases. Archaeological evidence suggests that the site evolved over centuries, with the central tower built first, followed by successive additions of walls and secondary towers. This gradual expansion implies long-term occupation and adaptation, perhaps in response to shifting political or environmental conditions. Yet there are gaps in the sequence, moments where construction appears to pause, or where earlier structures were modified in ways that are not fully understood. What events prompted these changes? Were they driven by internal development, external threats, or shifts in cultural priorities? The engineering of the site continues to provoke admiration and debate. The massive basalt blocks used in construction were quarried locally, yet their transport and placement required coordinated labor and precise organization. Some blocks weigh several tons, yet they were fitted together without mortar in a way that has preserved the structure for millennia. How did a Bronze Age society organize such efforts without the administrative systems known from contemporary civilizations like Egypt or Mesopotamia? Did they rely on oral tradition, communal cooperation, or leadership structures that have left no trace? Even the layout of Nuraxi invites speculation. The central tower is positioned in a way that offers wide visibility over the surrounding landscape, suggesting both defensive advantage and symbolic dominance. Some researchers propose that the structure may have also had astronomical or ritual significance, aligned with celestial events or seasonal cycles. However, no definitive evidence confirms this. Could the builders have encoded knowledge of the sky into stone, or are we imposing modern interpretations onto ancient choices driven by practical concerns? Within the village, signs of daily life emerge in subtle ways. Hearths, grinding stones, and storage pits indicate a community engaged in agriculture, animal husbandry, and craft production. Yet even here, questions linger. What social roles structured this community? Were there specialized artisans, warriors, or religious figures? Or did individuals perform multiple roles within a more fluid social system? The absence of written language means that such structures must be inferred indirectly, leaving room for multiple interpretations. Some of the most enigmatic finds at Nuraxi come from ritual contexts. Certain areas contain deposits of animal bones, broken pottery, and bronze objects arranged in ways that suggest ceremonial activity. Were these offerings to deities, ancestors, or natural forces? And how did these rituals relate to the construction and maintenance of the nurag itself? The relationship between the physical structure and spiritual practice remains one of the most compelling mysteries of the site. As centuries passed, the Nuragic civilization eventually came into contact with Phoenician, Carthaginian, and later Roman cultures. Yet, Nuraxi itself appears to have retained its distinct identity for a long time before being abandoned or transformed. What caused this shift, Was it gradual assimilation, environmental change, or political restructuring? And how did the memory of such monumental structures persist, or fade, within later societies? Today, standing among the basalt stones of Nuraxi, one is struck by a profound sense of endurance. The structure has survived wars, weather, and time itself, yet the people who built it remain largely anonymous. Their voices are absent, their stories fragmented into architecture and artifact. And yet, in those fragments, there is a persistent sense of intention, intelligence, and cultural depth that resists simple explanation. As the Mediterranean wind moves across the Sardinian hills and passes through the empty chambers of the Nurag, Nuraxi stands as both monument and question. It is a reminder that human societies have long possessed the ability to create complex, enduring structures, even when their motivations and meanings are no longer fully accessible to us. And so we are left to wonder, what did Nuraxi truly represent to those who built it? Power, protection, spirituality, identity, or something that does not fit neatly into any modern category at all? And what other meanings might still lie hidden within its silent stones, waiting for us to rediscover, reinterpret, or simply accept as part of a history that refuses to be fully known? From the enduring stone structures of Nuraxi, where Bronze Age ingenuity still echoes across the Sardinian hills, we now journey across the continent and the sea, tracing the subtle yet profound currents of human civilization. From the Mediterranean, our path takes us to the eastern coast of Africa, to the Swahili coast, where the Indian Ocean laps against coral reefs and sandy shores. Here lies Kilwa Kisiwani, the storied stone town whose ruins whisper tales of wealth, power, and mystery. A settlement that once dominated trade along the East African coast, and whose stones still guard secrets from centuries past. Approaching Kilwa Kisiwani, one is immediately struck by the combination of natural and human-made features. The town occupies a small island just off the coast of modern Tanzania, its coral rag buildings rising from the shoreline with a quiet dignity. The coral itself, carefully cut and mortared, glows with a pale, warm light in the sun, giving the ruins a luminous, almost ethereal presence. The streets wind organically, following the contours of the island rather than conforming to a rigid grid, suggesting a settlement that evolved over centuries, responding to both social needs and the rhythms of the surrounding sea. At the heart of Kilwa Kisiwani lies the Great Mosque, one of the oldest standing mosques in East Africa, constructed largely of coral stone and dating back to the 10th century AD. Its arches, columns, and intricately carved mihrabs reveal not only the skill of local artisans, but also the profound influence of trade connections with Arabia, Persia, and India. How such precise craftsmanship was achieved using the porous coral material continues to inspire both admiration and inquiry. Did these artisans learn techniques passed down from generations, or were methods imported from distant lands along the Indian Ocean trade network? Surrounding the mosque are the remains of grand stone houses, some multi-storied, others adorned with decorative niches and plastered walls. The level of urban sophistication is remarkable, suggesting that Kilwa was not merely a port, but a city of considerable social and political organization. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of imported ceramics, glass beads, and coins from as far afield as China and Persia, signaling a mercantile hub of extraordinary reach. Yet for all its material connections, the deeper social and political structures of Kilwa remain opaque. Who ruled this island, and by what authority were these transactions, alliances, and urban developments orchestrated? The town's layout itself raises questions. Its defensive walls, strategically positioned along key elevations, speak to concerns over protection from both rival city-states and seafaring threats. But the walls are irregular, adapted to the natural landscape, hinting at a dynamic interplay between geography and human ingenuity. Narrow passageways and hidden courtyards suggest both communal privacy and tactical advantage. Was Kilwa Kisiwani built with both defense and social hierarchy in mind? And what stories might lie in the unexcavated foundations still buried beneath centuries of sand and sediment? Kilwa's wealth, derived in large part from trade in gold, ivory, and other prized goods from the African interior, transformed it into a cosmopolitan center. Yet its rise raises further enigmas. How did a relatively small island come to dominate the regional trade network? Were there alliances with inland kingdoms, or was Kilwa's success primarily maritime in nature? And what social and economic structures allowed this small island population to orchestrate complex international trade over centuries? Archaeological studies have revealed sophisticated urban planning, including cisterns, wells, and drainage systems, suggesting that Kilwa's inhabitants were acutely aware of the challenges posed by the island's environment. Freshwater management on a coral island would have been essential, yet many questions remain. How were these systems maintained, and who oversaw them? Did these infrastructural developments serve the elite, or were they part of communal planning for all inhabitants? The answers are tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly elusive. Artifacts recovered from Kilwa Kisiwani provide further layers of intrigue. Chinese porcelain fragments from the Ming Dynasty, Persian ceramics, and local pottery all testify to the island's connections across continents. Beads and coins hint at both local production and imported currency, suggesting complex economic exchanges. Yet each discovery opens new questions. How did goods travel from inland Africa to the Indian Ocean, and from there to distant markets? What role did Kilwa's rulers, merchants, and ordinary citizens play in these networks, and how much of their organizational structure remains hidden from us? Historical accounts, including writings by Arab geographers such as al-Masudi, describe Kilwa as a city of remarkable wealth and order, yet archaeological evidence sometimes contradicts or complicates these narratives. Ruins suggest periods of construction, destruction, and renewal, hinting at political upheaval, environmental change, or social transformation. How did these forces shape the city's evolution? Were shifts in trade patterns or external invasions decisive, or did internal dynamics, alliances, disputes, succession, play a larger role in Kilwa's rise and decline? The town's decline itself is shrouded in mystery. By the 16th century, European explorers and Portuguese colonizers began to dominate the region, yet Kilwa's abandonment appears to have been gradual rather than sudden. Did environmental factors, such as shifts in water supply or coastal erosion, contribute to its decay? Or were geopolitical changes, the rise of competing ports, maritime powers, or regional alliances, more significant? The answers remain fragmentary, pieced together from archaeological strata, historical accounts, and the silent testimony of the stones themselves. Walking among Kilwa's ruins today, one can sense the rhythm of the city that once was, the bustle of traders, the call to prayer echoing from the mosque, the meticulous care of craftsmen shaping coral blocks into enduring walls. And yet, there is also the weight of the unknown, the voices of the ordinary inhabitants. The rituals of the past and the precise nature of Kilwa's governance remain beyond our grasp. Did these walls witness negotiations, disputes, ceremonies, or secrets that we may never fully comprehend? Even the island's natural surroundings contribute to the enigma. Mangroves, tidal channels, and reefs shaped how Kilwa's residents navigated their world, influencing trade, settlement patterns, and defense. The interplay between human settlement and environment prompts further questions. How did island geography constrain or empower the city? Were certain choices dictated by survival, prestige, or spiritual considerations? And what environmental changes over the centuries reshaped the island in ways we are only beginning to understand? Nuraxi and other monumental constructions remind us that human ingenuity often leaves behind traces that are both clear and mysterious. Kilwa Kisiwani, with its coral walls, mosques, and sprawling urban remnants, extends this narrative into the maritime world. It demonstrates the capacity of a small community to influence a vast region, yet the intimate details of daily life, political power, and cultural belief remain tantalizingly out of reach. As the sun sets over Kilwa, casting long shadows across the pale coral streets, the island evokes both awe and reflection. Its stones, silent yet eloquent, preserve the imprint of human ambition, creativity, and resilience, but also the persistence of mystery. What forces truly shaped Kilwa Kisiwani? How did ordinary lives intersect with trade, politics, and ritual to create a city whose influence spanned continents? And what secrets, buried beneath sand, water, and time, might still await discovery? Standing there, it is impossible not to feel that Kilwa Kisiwani is more than a ruin. It is a question posed in stone, coral, and water, inviting us to look deeper, think harder, and accept that some historical mysteries may never yield their full story, but continue to challenge our understanding of the past. From the coral stone ruins of Kilwa Kisiwani, where the Indian Ocean once carried ships, languages, and fortunes across continents, our journey now moves northward once more, back into the colder latitudes of the Atlantic edge of Europe. The warmth of coastal Africa gives way to wind, stone, and silence. Here, on the Orkney Islands off the northern coast of Scotland, the sea is never far, and the sky often feels close enough to touch. It is on mainland Orkney that we encounter Maeshowe, a massive Neolithic chambered tomb that rises almost invisibly from the grassy landscape, as though the earth itself were concealing something it does not wish to fully reveal. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than a gentle, artificial hill. Sheep graze across its surface. Wind moves over it without resistance. But beneath that unassuming mound lies one of the most extraordinary prehistoric monuments in northern Europe, constructed around 2800 BC, long before written history took shape in this region. A narrow passage leads into the heart of Maeshowe, and here the atmosphere changes immediately. The entrance is low, deliberately constricted, requiring visitors to crouch and step carefully forward. As one moves deeper, daylight fades almost completely, replaced by a heavy stillness broken only by distant echoes. Then, suddenly, the passage opens into a central chamber, a roughly square space built from enormous, precisely fitted stone slabs. The walls lean inward slightly, creating a corbelled vault that has remained intact for nearly 5,000 years. It is a space that feels engineered not only for endurance, but for experience. Maeshowe is aligned with remarkable precision. On the winter solstice, the setting sun sends a beam of light directly through the passageway, illuminating the back wall of the chamber in a rare and deliberate event. For a brief period, the darkness is broken, and the interior glows with a warm, golden light. Was this alignment intentional? Most archaeologists agree it likely was, suggesting that the builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of solar cycles. But how such knowledge was acquired, and why it was embedded into a tomb, remains an open question. Because Maeshowe is not simply a structure, it is a threshold between worlds. The chamber itself contains 3 side cells, arranged symmetrically off the central space. These small compartments, almost like sealed alcoves, were likely used for burials or the placement of human remains, though no complete bodies have survived within the monument in their original condition. Over centuries, the tomb was disturbed multiple times, first by unknown prehistoric activity, then later by Viking intrusions in the 12th century AD. The Norse left behind one of Maeshowe's most intriguing legacies: runic inscriptions carved into the stone walls. These inscriptions are not merely functional marks. Some are declarations of presence, names, travel notes, and boasts of treasure. Others are more cryptic, even playful. One reads like a simple message of occupation. Another hints at hidden knowledge or frustration at the conditions inside the chamber. Why would Norse visitors leave such extensive carvings in a prehistoric tomb already thousands of years old at the time of their arrival? Did they understand its original purpose, or did they reinterpret it entirely through their own cultural lens? And what does it mean that a Neolithic structure became a Viking canvas for expression? The original builders of Maeshowe remain anonymous. They belonged to a Neolithic society that left no written language in Orkney, yet their architectural achievements suggest coordination, labor organization, and symbolic thinking on a remarkable scale. The construction of Maeshowe would have required transporting massive sandstone blocks across considerable distances, shaping them with precision tools, and assembling them in a way that has allowed the structure to survive millennia of wind, rain, and shifting ground. But why build it at all? Mainstream archaeology interprets Maeshowe as a communal burial tomb, part of a broader Neolithic tradition in Orkney that includes sites like the Ring of Brodgar and the Stones of Stennis. These monuments appear interconnected, forming a ritual landscape that may have been tied to seasonal cycles, ancestral worship, or social cohesion. Yet even within this framework, Maeshowe stands apart. Its size, alignment, and internal design suggest something more than simple burial practice. Some researchers propose that Maeshowe may have functioned as a ceremonial space connected to solar observation, a place where light and darkness symbolically marked transitions between seasons, life, and death. Others suggest it may have been a territorial monument, asserting the presence of a community across generations. Still others argue that its meaning cannot be reduced to a single function, that it may have held multiple roles simultaneously, shifting over time as the society that built it evolved. But there are deeper uncertainties that resist even these interpretations. For example, the relationship between Maeshowe and the surrounding landscape is still not fully understood. The tomb is positioned within a network of prehistoric monuments, yet the precise reasons for this arrangement remain unclear. Were these sites aligned for astronomical purposes, social organization, or ritual pathways? Did people move between them in structured ceremonies, or were they independent expressions of shared cultural values? The evidence suggests connection, but not clarity. Inside the chamber, the acoustics add another layer of mystery. Sound behaves unusually within the space, amplifying whispers and distorting direction. It is easy to imagine that spoken words here would have carried symbolic weight. Was Maeshowe designed to manipulate not just light, but sound as well? Could rituals performed inside have been shaped by the way voices echoed off stone, creating experiences that felt otherworldly to those present? And then there is the question of time itself. Maeshowe has existed through the rise and fall of countless cultures: Neolithic builders, Bronze Age communities, Norse settlers, medieval farmers, and modern archaeologists. Each has left traces, yet none have fully explained the original intention behind its creation. The tomb has absorbed these layers of meaning, becoming not a single monument, but a palimpsest of human interpretation. Even its name reflects this ambiguity. Maeshowe derives from Old Norse, roughly meaning maiden's mound, though the origin of this name is uncertain. Who was this maiden, and why was the tomb associated with her? Was it a misinterpretation by later visitors, or a transformation of earlier beliefs into new mythologies? The site also raises questions about perception itself. Standing inside Maeshowe, with its heavy stones and carefully engineered silence, one cannot help but feel a sense of separation from the outside world. It is not merely a shelter for the dead. It feels like a constructed experience of transition, a space designed to alter awareness. But was this intentional, or are we projecting modern interpretations onto ancient design choices driven by practical needs? Archaeology can describe structure, materials, and orientation. It can estimate dates and reconstruct sequences of use, but it struggles with meaning. And Maeshowe is a monument built in meaning as much as in stone. As the winter light moves across the Orkney landscape, the tomb remains still, its grassy mound blending seamlessly into the earth. Sheep continue to graze above it, unaware of the chamber below where darkness and alignment once converged in carefully planned moments of illumination. And so the questions persist, unchanged for millennia. What did Maeshowe truly represent to those who built it? Tomb, temple, calendar, or something that defies all these categories? And how much of its original purpose has been lost not to decay, but to the limits of our understanding? From the enclosed stone chamber of Maeshowe, where Neolithic builders aligned earth, light, and silence into a monument of passage and memory, our journey now returns once again to the Mediterranean world. The cold winds of Orkney fade behind us as the landscape shifts southward, where sun, sea, and stone converge on the Balearic island of Minorca. Here, among rolling scrubland, limestone hills, and distant views of a deep blue horizon, rises one of the most remarkable prehistoric settlements in the western Mediterranean, Torre den Galmés. At first approach, the site does not immediately reveal its magnitude. The terrain appears uneven, scattered with low stone walls and weathered structures blending into the natural contours of the hill. But as one ascends the slope, the settlement unfolds gradually. Terraces, enclosures, dwellings, and defensive walls emerging in layers across the landscape. Torre den Galmés is not a single structure, but a sprawling Bronze and Iron Age settlement, occupied from around 1000 BC until the Roman period, and later reoccupied in varying forms. It is one of the largest prehistoric sites in the Balearic Islands, yet its purpose and organization still raise questions that resist simple answers. The settlement is dominated by 3 talayots, massive stone towers built from irregular limestone blocks without mortar. These structures rise from the landscape like silent sentinels, their purpose still debated. Some suggest they served defensive functions, acting as watchtowers or strongholds. Others propose they were symbolic or ceremonial in nature, marking territorial or communal identity rather than military necessity. The ambiguity remains embedded in their very form. Solid, imposing, yet lacking clear evidence of siege or warfare at the scale one might expect for such construction. Between these towers stretches a complex network of homes, courtyards, and communal spaces. The dwellings are circular or oval in shape, built with thick stone foundations that once supported wooden or thatched roofs. Inside, archaeologists have found hearths, storage areas, grinding stones, and pottery fragments, offering glimpses into everyday life. Yet even here, questions persist. Why are certain houses clustered together while others stand isolated? Does this reflect family groups, social hierarchy, or occupational specialization? The settlement appears organized, yet not rigidly structured in a way that modern eyes might expect. Water management is another intriguing aspect of Torre den Galmés. Despite its elevated position, the site includes sophisticated systems for collecting and storing rainwater, including cisterns and channels carved into stone. On an island where seasonal rainfall can be unpredictable, such systems would have been essential for survival. But they also suggest foresight, planning, and communal coordination. How were these systems maintained across generations? And what social mechanisms ensured equitable access to such a vital resource? One of the most enigmatic features of the site is the presence of underground structures known as hypogea, rock-cut chambers used for burial or ritual purposes. These spaces, carved directly into the limestone bedrock, are often narrow and carefully shaped, sometimes containing human remains or funerary offerings. Yet the burial practices observed here do not always follow consistent patterns. Some chambers contain multiple individuals. Others appear deliberately emptied or reused. What determined these variations? Were they based on family lineage, social status, or shifting ritual beliefs over time? The absence of written records from the Talayotic culture only deepens the mystery. Without inscriptions or texts, interpretation relies entirely on material remains. And while pottery, tools, and architectural features provide valuable insight, they cannot fully reveal the beliefs, social structures, or political systems of the people who lived here. Were they organized into hierarchical chiefdoms, or did they operate as more egalitarian communities bound by shared traditions and rituals? The stones offer clues, but not certainty. Torre den Galmés also reveals evidence of external contact. Imported ceramics and materials suggest that the settlement was not isolated. Instead, it likely participated in broader Mediterranean exchange networks, interacting indirectly with Phoenician, Carthaginian, and later Roman traders. But the nature of these interactions remains unclear. Were the inhabitants active participants in trade, or did goods arrive through intermediary ports and exchanges? And how did these external influences shape local traditions, architecture, and belief systems? Some of the most compelling mysteries lie in the settlement's spatial organization. The three talayots are positioned in a way that suggests deliberate planning across the landscape, possibly forming visual or symbolic alignments. From certain vantage points, the towers appear interconnected, forming a triangular arrangement that dominates the surrounding terrain. Was this intentional? And if so, what meaning did it carry? Defensive strategy, astronomical alignment, or symbolic representation of social or spiritual concepts? Each possibility remains open, yet none fully explains the complexity of the arrangement. Daily life at Torre den Galmés can only be reconstructed in fragments. Grinding stones suggest grain processing, likely barley or wheat cultivation. Animal bones indicate livestock herding, including sheep, goats, and cattle. Pottery shards reveal cooking and storage practices, while tools hint at weaving, construction, and metalworking. Yet these fragments, though informative, cannot fully reconstruct the rhythms of life in the settlement. What stories unfolded in these courtyards? What rituals marked seasonal change, birth, death, or communal decision-making? The settlement's long occupation, spanning nearly a millennium, adds another layer of complexity. Over time, architectural modifications suggest adaptation to changing conditions, whether environmental, social, or political. Walls were reinforced, structures expanded, and spaces repurposed. Yet there are also signs of gradual decline and partial abandonment before eventual Roman influence transformed the island's cultural landscape. What drove these changes? Was it climate variability, resource pressure, shifting trade routes, or internal transformation within the society itself? Even the relationship between the settlement and its surrounding landscape invites reflection. Torre den Galmés sits atop a hill with commanding views of the southern coast of Minorca. This position would have offered strategic advantages, but also symbolic prominence. Was visibility a form of control, signaling presence and authority across the landscape? Or did the location hold ritual significance, connecting the settlement to sea routes, celestial cycles, or ancestral memory embedded in the land itself? The stones themselves seem to carry this ambiguity. Weathered by wind and time, they form structures that are at once practical and enigmatic. Unlike monumental cities built for display or empire, Torre den Galmés feels embedded in its environment, neither fully dominating nor fully submissive to it. It exists in a liminal space between human design and natural landscape, between permanence and impermanence. Modern excavation has revealed much, yet not enough to fully resolve its story. Archaeologists continue to map structures, analyze materials, and reconstruct possible sequences of occupation. But interpretation remains open-ended. Each discovery raises new questions rather than closing old ones. Why did certain architectural traditions persist for centuries while others changed rapidly? How did knowledge pass between generations in the absence of written language? And what role did ritual, memory, and oral tradition play in shaping the identity of the settlement? Standing among the ruins today, one hears only wind moving through stone and scrub. Yet it is not silence in the absolute sense. It is a layered silence, one shaped by thousands of years of human presence, activity, and disappearance. Every wall suggests a conversation that once took place. Every courtyard implies gathering, decision, or ritual. Every tower hints at watchfulness, whether of land, sea, or something less tangible. And so, Torre den Galmés remains suspended between clarity and obscurity. It is a place where archaeology provides structure, but not final answers, where stone records presence, but not intention. As the sun lowers over Minorca and the shadows of the Taliots stretch across the hillside, one question lingers in the stillness. What kind of society built a place like this? Not just to live within the landscape, but to inscribe its presence into it so deeply that even after centuries of abandonment, its meaning continues to resist full understanding? From the river valleys and temple mounds of the Bujang Valley, where early Southeast Asian societies carved out a world of trade, ritual, and uncertain governance, our path now turns northwest once more, crossing seas, deserts, and mountain ranges until the landscape hardens into one of the most extreme environments on Earth. In southeastern Iran, near the dry bed of the Helmand River Basin, lies a site that seems almost impossible in its scale and sophistication given its harsh surroundings: Shahr-e Sukhteh, the Burnt City. At first glance, the name feels almost prophetic. The desert stretches endlessly, broken only by wind-carved ridges and pale, dust-covered earth. But beneath this desolate surface lies one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in the ancient world, a Bronze Age urban center that flourished between roughly 3,200 BC and 1,800 BC, long before the rise of many better-known civilizations. The city's remains suggest not only complexity and organization, but also innovation that continues to challenge assumptions about technological development in early urban societies. Shahr-e Sukhteh was not a small settlement. At its height, it may have supported tens of thousands of inhabitants, making it one of the largest urban centers of its time in the region. Excavations reveal distinct urban zones, residential districts, industrial areas, burial grounds, and administrative or ceremonial spaces. Streets were organized with a degree of planning that suggests coordination and governance. Houses were constructed from mud brick, adapted to the extreme climate, with thick walls designed to mitigate heat and seasonal variation. Yet what makes Shahr-e Sukhteh particularly compelling is not only its scale, but the extraordinary range of discoveries found within it. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of advanced craftsmanship, including intricate pottery, finely woven textiles, and sophisticated bead-making industries. The precision of these objects suggests specialized labor and a well-developed understanding of material properties. How did such expertise emerge in a city so geographically isolated from other major urban centers? Was this innovation entirely local, or part of a broader, interconnected network of ancient exchange? One of the most striking finds is a wooden artificial eye discovered in a female burial. Carefully crafted from bitumen paste and gold threads, it appears to have been designed for realistic appearance and comfort. This object is widely regarded as one of the earliest known prosthetic devices in human history. Its existence raises profound questions about medical knowledge, craftsmanship, and social care in Shahr-e Sukhteh. Who created it, and for whom? What does it reveal about attitudes toward disability, identity, and human dignity in this ancient city? Even more enigmatic is the discovery of a possible early form of animation, a painted clay cup depicting a goat leaping toward a tree. When rotated, the images appear to create a sequence of motion, suggesting a conceptual understanding of visual storytelling or proto-animation thousands of years before modern technology. Was this intentional experimentation with motion and imagery, or a symbolic motif whose significance we are only beginning to interpret? The distinction is subtle, but important, and still debated among researchers. The city's burial practices add further complexity to its story. One of the largest cemeteries of the ancient world has been found at Shahr-e Sukhteh, containing thousands of graves. The burial styles are remarkably diverse, including simple interments and more elaborate arrangements with goods such as pottery, tools, jewelry, and food offerings. Yet patterns within the cemetery remain difficult to fully interpret. Some graves are richly furnished, while others are nearly empty. Does this reflect social hierarchy, occupational differences, family structures, or shifting ritual beliefs over time? Intriguingly, the skeletal remains also suggest a relatively healthy population, with evidence of both hard labor and skilled activity. Dental analysis, bone structure, and wear patterns indicate a society engaged in agriculture, craft production, and trade. Yet despite these insights, many aspects of daily life remain obscured. What languages did they speak? What stories did they tell? And how were decisions made in a city of such size and complexity without the clear written records found in other ancient civilizations? Shahr-e Sukhteh also demonstrates remarkable evidence of trade networks spanning vast distances. Materials such as lapis lazuli, turquoise, and marine shells have been found at the site, indicating connections with regions far beyond southeastern Iran, including Central Asia, the Indus Valley, and possibly Mesopotamia. These exchanges imply not only economic interaction, but also cultural and technological diffusion. Yet the mechanisms of this trade remain partly speculative. Were there established routes, seasonal caravans, or intermediary hubs facilitating the movement of goods? And how did Shahr-e Sukhteh position itself within these networks? Was it a producer, a redistributor, or a cultural crossroads? The city's name itself, Burnt City, derives from visible layers of ash found in certain excavation areas. Evidence suggests at least one major fire event during its long occupation, though the extent and cause remain uncertain. Was this destruction accidental, the result of environmental catastrophe or industrial activity? Or could it have been the consequence of conflict, internal or external? The archaeological record does not provide a definitive answer, leaving only traces of burning embedded in the soil. Environmental conditions likely played a significant role in the city's rise and decline. The region's arid climate required careful management of water resources, and evidence suggests the use of irrigation channels and water storage systems. Yet long-term shifts in climate or river behavior may have impacted the city's sustainability. Did environmental stress contribute to gradual abandonment, or was the decline more sudden, driven by political or economic changes beyond the immediate region? One of the most compelling aspects of Shahr-e Sukhteh is its apparent independence from the more widely documented early civilizations of Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, despite clear evidence of interaction. The city seems to represent a distinct cultural trajectory, neither fully isolated nor fully integrated into the dominant historical narratives of its time. This raises important questions about how many such civilizations existed outside the major frameworks we typically study, and how many remain underexplored or misunderstood due to gaps in the archaeological record. Walking through the ruins today, the sense of layered time is almost overwhelming. Wind moves across the barren landscape, carrying fine dust that settles over ancient foundations. The outlines of buildings emerge and fade depending on the angle of light. In some places, the ground is scattered with pottery shards. In others, only faint depressions mark where walls once stood. It is a city that seems both present and absent at the same time, physically erased in parts, yet intellectually persistent in the questions it raises. Shahr-e Sukhteh challenges simple narratives of technological and social development. It suggests that complexity, innovation, and artistic expression were not confined to a few well-known centers of antiquity, but were widespread, emerging in diverse environments under different conditions. Yet the reasons why this particular city developed such unique features, and why it eventually declined, remain open to interpretation. And so we are left with a deeper uncertainty. What kind of knowledge existed in Shahr-e Sukhteh that has not survived in written form? How did its people understand medicine, art, and society in ways that produced objects so advanced for their time? And what parts of its story have been permanently lost beneath the shifting sands of the desert, waiting perhaps not to be discovered in full, but only to hint at the vastness of what we still do not know about the ancient world? Continuing our journey through the echoes of ancient human ingenuity, we leave the windswept taliots of Minorca behind and trace the path southward across the seas to a tropical landscape where river valleys wind through dense greenery and mist-laden mornings cloak traces of civilizations long forgotten. Here lies the Bujang Valley, nestled in what is now northern Malaysia, a region whose fertile soils, strategic waterways, and natural resources nurtured human settlement for millennia. It is a place where history and mystery intertwine, where monumental ruins rise from the earth in ways that hint at wealth, power, and knowledge long vanished from memory. At first glance, the valley appears deceptively ordinary: undulating fields, scattered trees, and meandering streams. But a closer look reveals the faint outlines of stone structures, mounds, and ruins partially obscured by time and vegetation. Archaeologists have identified hundreds of these features, some stretching over 50 kilometers, forming one of the most extensive pre-Islamic cultural landscapes in Southeast Asia. These are not isolated monuments. They are part of a vast, interconnected system whose purpose, scale, and complexity continue to intrigue scholars. Among the most striking features of Bujang Valley are its temple remains, known locally as Kandi. Built primarily from bricks rather than stone, these structures rise in compact pyramidal forms, their walls often partially collapsed, yet still conveying an unmistakable sense of architectural intention. Carbon dating and material analysis suggest that some of these temples were constructed as early as the 1st century AD, making them among the oldest known in the region. They reflect not only technological proficiency, but also sophisticated spiritual and social organization. The valley's rivers, particularly the Merbok River, played a critical role in the development of these settlements. They served as arteries for trade, transportation, and sustenance, connecting inland communities to the wider maritime networks of the Indian Ocean. Archaeologists have uncovered artifacts of foreign origin: Indian beads, Chinese ceramics, and Middle Eastern coins, pointing to extensive interactions with distant civilizations. Yet, how these interactions shaped local culture remains partially obscured. Did the Bujang Valley function primarily as a trade hub, a religious center, or both? The material record offers tantalizing hints, but definitive answers remain elusive. One of the most compelling mysteries concerns the social structure of the valley's inhabitants. The scale of construction, the precision of masonry, and the spatial arrangement of the temples and mounds imply centralized coordination. Yet, no inscriptions comparable to those found in India or China have been discovered in situ, leaving the identities, hierarchies, and leadership of these communities largely speculative. Were they governed by monarchs, councils of elders, or priestly elites? The absence of written records challenges conventional reconstruction of political and societal organization, forcing historians to rely on the archaeological fabric itself for clues. The valley also offers intriguing evidence of early metallurgy and craft specialization. Excavations have revealed iron tools, bronze ornaments, and finely crafted ceramics, suggesting a society skilled not only in agriculture and construction, but also in the arts of metalwork and trade. Some scholars propose that such technological sophistication may have enabled the Bujang Valley to participate in trans-regional commerce earlier than previously assumed, raising questions about the diffusion of knowledge and the flow of materials across ancient Southeast Asia. How did these people acquire such expertise, and what networks of exchange facilitated the movement of goods, ideas, and technologies? Yet, even as the valley speaks to human ingenuity, it also guards secrets. Many of its mounds remain unexcavated, partially destroyed, or simply unrecognized beneath dense vegetation. Satellite imagery suggests patterns and alignments among certain temples and mounds that are not immediately explained by topography alone. Could these alignments reflect astronomical observation, ritual pathways, or symbolic relationships within the society? And if so, what knowledge, belief, or cosmology drove their design? The stones themselves provide evidence, but interpretation is necessarily cautious. Another layer of mystery surrounds burial practices. Certain mounds appear to serve funerary purposes, containing human remains along with offerings of pottery, jewelry, and tools. The variety of burial styles, cremation versus inhumation, single versus multiple interments, suggests complex ritual norms, potentially evolving over centuries. Yet these practices are not fully understood, and some mounds lack clear funerary markers altogether, raising questions about social differentiation, spiritual beliefs, and the possible presence of unrecorded ceremonial functions. How were the dead honored? And how did these practices intersect with the living landscape? Environmental context adds another dimension to the enigma of Bujang Valley. The region is prone to seasonal flooding, and its rivers carry silt that gradually alters the landscape. Yet the settlement patterns show careful adaptation to these conditions. Elevated platforms, drainage channels, and strategic positioning of temples indicate an awareness of environmental risks and resources, and the ability to manipulate them effectively. Could such engineering feats also reflect sophisticated communal organization, perhaps even early forms of urban planning in a landscape otherwise dominated by natural forces? Trade, ritual, and settlement patterns intertwine in ways that continue to challenge historians. Foreign artifacts are found intermingled with locally produced ceramics. Mounds with unclear functions sit near river bends, while temples occupy commanding positions on slightly elevated ground. This suggests a society operating at the intersection of commerce, religion, and community life, yet resisting simple classification. Were these structures primarily functional, symbolic, or a hybrid of both? And to what degree did external influences reshape indigenous practices, creating a syncretic culture whose meaning is now partially lost to time? The Bujang Valley also provokes broader questions about historical memory. Unlike monumental empires documented in written chronicles, the valley's achievements exist primarily in stone, brick, and soil. Its story must be inferred, reconstructed through excavation, stratigraphy, and careful comparison with contemporary civilizations. What does this tell us about the fragility of historical record, the contingencies of preservation, and the countless narratives that vanish without trace? Could there be elements of the society's identity that archaeology will never reveal? Secrets embedded in oral traditions or knowledge that never left tangible form? Walking among the remnants today, the sense of time's layering is palpable. Moss clings to ancient bricks, roots pry at foundations, and the distant river winds silently through the valley. The mounds and temples, though decayed, convey an enduring presence. They testify to human ambition, ritual, and adaptation, yet resist full understanding. Each wall, each terrace, each fragment of pottery suggests a story that is partially told but largely concealed. And so, as we peer across the Bujang Valley, with its rivers shimmering in the sunlight and its temples rising from the earth like echoes of forgotten prayers, we confront the paradox of history itself. clarity and mystery entwined. Archaeology illuminates, but also shadows. Knowledge grows, yet questions deepen. What kind of society built these mounds and temples, organized labor and belief, engaged in long-distance trade, and left a landscape so vast and intricate, yet no written records? What beliefs, ambitions, or cosmologies drove them to transform river valleys into structured, sacred, and civic landscapes? And crucially, what remains buried, unexamined, or lost, waiting to reshape our understanding of this enigmatic civilization? The Bujang Valley, like the silent stones of Torre den Galmés or the talayots of Minorca before it, whispers across time, reminding us that history is never fully complete, and that some of humanity's greatest mysteries reside not only in what survives, but in what has been deliberately or inadvertently obscured by the passage of centuries.